This is the scene from Bruges this morning, or Brugge as they say in Flanders, with Lance Armstrong signing on in the colours of Radio Shack for what is the best race of the year in my opinion. Being hassled immediately by Andre from the Belgian press. Juan Antonio Fletcher in fine form. Sky's big man to challenge here. Philippe Gilbert on the podium last year. Is he the man to take a Tour of Flanders this year? Rain at the start of Bruges, but it is settling down a little bit now, getting a little bit colder. George Hincapie in the American Champions colours, riding for BMC, always a bit of a threat on the cobbles, although he's never ever pulled off the big one. Stijn de Volder aiming to become only the second man to get 3 in a row here in the Tour of Flanders. One of the big favourites, certainly with the French press and with the Belgians, of course. It's Tom Boonen. Boonen in fine form, really good shape. He's the overwhelming favourite. Well, we caught up with Philippe Gilbert on the podium last year to see exactly what he thinks.
Bonjour. Ça va? Ça va, ouais.
There he is talking to Vincent Renaud, our team journalist. He says, my goals are first of all to win a Tour of Flanders one day, and that's for sure is a dream. Then this year I'm in better shape than ever. After all, you never know what might happen in a race like this. A mechanical problem can occur at any time. There can be placing issues, where you are in the race, at what time. In a race that lasts 6 hours and more, you could make mistakes in 30 seconds or at a key moment, and then the race is lost. But physically, I can do as good or even better than I can last year. Well, it's a race where all the riders try to do better than they would do normally and try and outperform, because it's a bigger challenge, the Tour of Flanders, than anywhere else. Even for a young rider to finish 20th in the Tour of Flanders is something absolutely wonderful. Each position at the end has a different value in different races, so this is a really hard race. There's some favourites who are out of contention, of course. Bosenhagen, Pozzato. The goal is to be there on the day, not to be sick, not to fall, and to avoid all those obstacles. And then you have to play your cards right. For me, the big favourite is Tom Boonen. Fletcher, maybe. He's in decent shape. And then there's always De Volder amongst the favourites. And there's a few riders at the same level, like Thor Hushovd. We're talking about a lot of riders who could do something here. I know there's been some who are a little bit sick, and they are some of the big ones, but we'll have to see. You can create a surprise here in the Tour of Flanders. Here we are then. This is the Ronde in Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, being run since 1913. 15 hills this year, a couple less than perhaps in previous years. Starting at Den Ast, they're already over the top of that. Kloosberg, Notterberg, Old Quermont, Paterberg, Koppenberg, Steenbeck-Dries, Theenberg, Molkenberg, Eichenberg, Molenberg. Molenberg a little bit later on in the course. This year we usually have it sort of second or third hill, but they've jiggled out the order. The sun is trying to break through at the moment. You can see it's dry on the road here, but you never know in the Tour of Flanders. It was wet this morning. If it gets wet again on some of these hills, especially like the Koppenberg, even though it's been resurfaced in recent years, it can be really, really difficult. For me, this is the race of the year. This is the big one. I love this race. And we're very pleased to have you live here on Eurosport for the next 4 hours until we finish. And at the moment, the situation is there are 8 riders away. They've been away early on. There was a group of 5 who went away, and then they were joined by 3 more. They are Nicolas Rousseau of AG2R, Vincente Garcia Costa of Case d'Epargne, Michele Merlo of Fouton Cerveto, Olivier Bonner of Francis de Jure, Mikhail Ignatiev of Katusha, David Boucher of Landbau Credit. He always features in these races. He tries to go out very early. He's a bit of a specialist in going out early in breaks. Floris Goossenen of Skill Shimano, and Joost van Leeuwen of Vacances Soleil. Must be terribly disappointed, Vacances Soleil, at the moment, not getting their wildcard place in the Tour de France, having spent all that money on French riders and having it start in Rotterdam as well. Well, it's a good day at the moment, certainly in weather terms, and people shedding a lot of arm warmers and so on, but it wasn't very nice earlier on in the day. The teams this year in the Tour of Flanders. Quick-Step, AG2R, Astana, Case the Pan, Euskaltel, Futon Cerveto. We haven't seen them at all so far this year on our screens anyway. Well, not what I've been commentating. Francis de Jeu, Lampre, Liquigas, Omega Pharma, Rabobank, Sky, Garmin Transitions, HTC Columbia, Katusha, Milram, Radio Shack, Saxo Bank, Bouygues Telecom, BMC and Cervela. They're all the big ones, and just bubbling underneath. Landbau Credit, always love to get into this race. Skill Shimano, Top Sport Vlaanderen, they expect them to be here, it being a Flandrian race, and Vacances Soleil. Well, they're eating up the gap now, the gap between the two groups. The group of 8 ahead, and the peloton is 9 minutes. It was up to 13 at one time, but it's whittled down now. Next to me, as you would expect, it's the other half of the partnership, Sean Kelly with me, and knows this race like the back of his hand. Sean, the weather today looks to be a little more favourable than we expected, perhaps.
Yes, it's looking okay for the moment. At the start there was some rain there, but it dried up, and it looks like that it could be you know, pretty okay. The occasional shower we can see there, but I don't think they're going to get anything major where it will come down for many hours, and that is important in the Tour of Flanders, because if you get a difficult, bad weather conditions, well, then it makes the race more difficult and more dangerous. And as we can see, the riders are, you know, stripping off here, taking off some of their gilets and getting stripped down. As we're coming to the, I suppose, the important part of the first section, importantly in this race, where there's a bit of a selection to come now, and that's when it gets very busy, and we can see the riders are getting ready for that.
Talk us through this race just very briefly, Sean. It is a race of two halves, really, isn't it? Everybody keeps their powder dry for the first 100 whoops to people taking to the, oh, you just knew that was going to happen immediately. Somebody took to the side. There's been a big crash in the middle, and hopefully no real injuries to anybody. Just having a good look who's in there. Looks like one of the Bouygues Telecom rider, Garmin rider, is there in the middle there, and everybody just trying to get around. Nobody on the deck still. Yeah, it is one of the Garmin transition riders. It's Tyler Farrar, I think. Yeah, Tyler Farrar is thrown his bike to the side, and not a good start to the most important section of the race. So 3 of the riders from Garmin needing some sort of attention, and more problems for one of the riders from Landbau Credit in the dark green there. Bouygues Telecom on the left-hand side. Difficult to see who the riders are from this distance, but a lot of people doing a bit of cyclocross, and everybody just stopping. That looks like one of the Top Sport Vlaanderen guys has gone down as well. He's got back on his bike fairly quickly. And a front tyre, I think, for William Bonnet. Was whipping a front tyre out of somebody's bike for Bouygues Telecom. Well, not so much nerves, I think, just everybody getting a bit tangled up. But, sorry, to go back to the question I was asking you, Sean, this is really a sort of race of two halves, isn't it? There's the out and back section before they hit the cobblestones. And how is that characterised, that initial section on the flatter roads of West Flanders?
Well, I think it's a situation where the big riders and the big teams try and spare their energy as much as possible, and you know, keep it for the final 100 kilometres. And you always have the breakaways, which we have seen here with our 8 men out front at the moment. There's, you know, always teams and always riders who maybe haven't got anybody for the final of this race. They try and get somebody in to the earlier break and build up a big advantage, and hopefully get some air time before the big riders get up front, and the battle to win the race outright really starts. And you know, there's always that bit of rivalry as well. Who takes up the chase? As you say, if you have 8 riders as we have today, again, it's often been the case over the last number of years, 5, 6, 8 riders out in front, and if they get a big advantage, they can stay out there for a long time. And who's going to control the pace setting back in the bunch earlier on? Sometimes that is, you know, a little bit difficult rivalry between the teams, and the breakaway can go on a long ways into the end of the race. But we've seen here it's coming down very quickly, and it's getting nervous back in the bunch at the moment, because we're coming to a section now where the first section of cobblestones and the hills are going to start, and you know, there's going to be the first little bit of a lottery here, where position is so important.
Well, we've got a lot of commercial breaks to take, so we are going to pack them in at this point, if we can, in the first half of our broadcast, so that we don't miss all the action later on. So we're going to take one now with 8:43 a gap at the moment. Welcome back. Live pictures here from the Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen. 132 kilometers to go. We have 8 men out in a breakaway. Not unusual in the Tour of Flanders. 8 minutes and 41 seconds is the gap they've got. It was up to 13. Nicolas Rousseau from AG2R. The man at the back there is Florian Gousson of the Skill Shimano squad. That's a terrible kit, isn't it? That's the Cerveto, Futon Cerveto on the far right-hand side there. Awful. Sorry, but it is. The rider from there is Michele Merlot. Olivier Bonner, Francis de Jeux, Mikhail Ignatiev from Katusha at the back there. David Boucher of Landbouw Credit. Just van Leyen of Vacon Soleil, and Vincenti Garcia Costa of K-Stepan. Nice to see him out on the break for a change rather than dragging everybody else around. So we talked about the first half of this race, protect the big riders. Second half of the race, last 140 kilometers basically is where we get to the Helling, the hills. Started off with Den Ast this time around, which is not a usual hill, well, hasn't been a usual hill in the last decade or so. And then we get to the Kloosberg, the first of the well-known hills. 15 of them this time around. Den Ast, Kloosberg, Nokkeberg, Oud Quermont, Paterberg, Koppenberg, Steenbik-Dries, Teyenberg, Eichenberg, Molenberg, Leeberg, Berendries, which is a bit more of a flat section than anything else. Ten Bosch, the Muur, of course, and the Bosberg being the last one. The run-in slightly different this year than it has been in previous years. They've taken out a couple of the hills. Sean, we talked about the character of the first half of the race. What is the character of the second half of this race?
Well, the second half of the race, it starts to get more nervous, and you get the second half, you start getting into the more difficult points. When you look at the parcours today, you know, it's really when you get to the point of the old Quadramount, which is around the 180 kilometre mark into the race, that's when it really gets to the crucial point, because you go on from there. You have the Knochenberg just before that, which is at 170k, Oude Quadramount, Patersberg, Koppenberg, you know, and those ones are the ones which are, you know, so important, because you have to be really on the front of the race there, because that's where it just, you know, blows to pieces, and there's riders everywhere. And we know the Koppenberg, Patersberg, Koppenberg, we see so many riders having to walk on that, and if you get caught up in that, well, then you have to make a big effort to get back on. And if you ever get back into the main part of the race, you have to put in a huge effort, and you pay for that, or a lot of the riders will pay for that later. So that's what you've got to avoid. Stay up there in front and be with the top 20-30 riders going into the Oude Quadramount, Patersberg and Koppenberg.
We'll talk about some of the favourite riders in a minute, but the gap is 8:32. It's coming down gradually. There's still a long way to go, so they're not worried about it at the moment. They're getting plenty of TV exposure. You never know, though. Somebody could forge on from this group and have a good go. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Boucher continues to push on as hard as possible. He's that sort of rider. As they go through Mollendorp. This is one of the flat sections of cobbles. This is completely different in character. If you've never been to the classics, and they're weekend after weekend, this Tour of Flanders is backed up next weekend by Paris-Roubaix, but they are totally different type of races. Just because they're classics, don't ever confuse them, Sean.
No, well, if you look at you know, the last one, the classic we had, Milan-San Remo, it's totally different altogether. You know, this one, you know, the small roads, the hills, short hills, cobble sections, flat cobbles, as you mentioned just a moment ago. So you've got everything in this race. Where in Milan-San Remo, you've got the hills very much in the end, but you know, it's good roads, pretty wide roads, good surface. But here you have the concrete road, then you have the cobblestones, and of course the hills, which are so difficult with the cobble sections, the cobble climbs, and you know, it's a very nervous race. Positioning, and as we heard in some of the pre-race interviews there with Philip Gilbert, positioning is very important, and you can see here as you come into the climb climbs. You can imagine this, we have only 8 riders here, but when you come with a bunch of almost 200 riders, how difficult it is if you're a bit further back, and you have to be in that 20, 30 riders when the racing really hots up and you're going for those difficult sections, the most important sections. You just have got to be in the top 20, 30 riders.
All being equal, weather being equal, fitness being equal, harder race, Roubaix or Flanders?
Well, I think Flanders is a very difficult one because you know, you have the climbs thrown in as well, and if you calculate the number of kilometres of cobble sections, that's quite high. It pushes on, you know, to be quite a number of kilometres, and there are also the climbs in that, so that makes it a very difficult race. And I think you know, Flanders can be as difficult as Roubaix. Roubaix, of course, we have 50 kilometres of cobblestones, but it's, you know, it's pan flat all day. So you know, the number of riders maybe that can win this one is not any greater than it is in the Paris-Roubaix.
Absolutely, yeah. Saxo Bank on the front, so they're working for 2 riders. Matti Breschel, you can see on the left-hand side there in the Danish champions jersey, and also Fabian Cancellara is wearing the Swiss champions jersey. Can be a little bit confusing if you see them from a distance, but one, of course, has a great big white cross in the middle and one has a small white cross in the middle. Cancellara, if he were to win today, would be only one of 11 men ever to have won all 3 of the early spring classics: Roubaix, Milan-San Remo and Tour of Flanders. Last year dogged by problems and snapped a chain on the Koppenberg. And the thing about that is, because you can't get cars up the Koppenberg, they're not allowed to go up it. No support cars. Game over for Fabian Cancellara, snapping a chain. Some people would say bad luck. Some people would look at the chain and go, maybe we should change our chain manufacturer. But there we go. We shall see. Marcin Sapa, the Polish rider, was Polish champion a couple of years ago, seems to be hanging off the back of the moment. Saxo Bank seemed to be turning up the wick a little bit. It's O'Grady pushing the pace on at the front just a bit at the moment and beginning to string them out, but we know that the road is getting smaller and narrower here, and they want to be up towards the front and keep out of trouble. You can see Cancellara about 5 or 6 back. I'm just trying to work out some easy way of seeing him, well, apart from the fact that he's bigger than Matti Breschel. He's got glasses, different coloured glasses on, and he's also got a gilet on at the moment. So things are beginning to stretch out just a little bit here at the back. Hutrovic dropping off a bit as well. So the pace is really being hotted up at the front by Saxo Bank. We are on air for 4 hours solid today, which is fantastic news. We've got a lot of ad breaks to fit in, as you would expect. It's a big race. They want to get the advertisers want to get their money's worth. We'll pack them in as soon as we can, so that we have the rest of the race free for you. That's the plan anyway. We are on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. If you've got any questions, Sue's already written in saying 4 hours of Flanders, dream come true. Thanks very much for that, Sue. We are going to be on air. Any questions for Sean? It's cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. We're also on Twitter. You can follow us at Spokesmen. That's SPOKESMEN, and there's also Eurosport UK TV as well. But the weather's turning out to be a lot better than we expected. Another commercial break then. We'll pack him in while we can, and the gap is just under 8 minutes now, 126 kilometers to go. Welcome back. 7 minutes 41 is the gap. 125 kilometers to go. The next big test they'll come across, and everybody will be adjusting for space, will be the Kloosberg with 97.3 kilometers to go. The Kloosberg itself as a climb back in, and it's over a kilometer in length, about a 5% gradient, but not a cobbled climb. It's an asphalt climb. So there was a time when they started to put asphalt over all the climbs in Flanders, and there was a bit of a panic, as you would expect. Back in the 60s and early 70s, people were trying to make this poorer part of West Flanders a bit more accessible. People were using more cars. They were trying to up the standards in the area, just for the community in general, and they started to lose a lot of these climbs. Luckily, some of them have been brought back to cobbles again. In fact, the organisers had to try and find more and more climbs, and it's changed a lot over the years, Flanders. I mean, how do you think it's changed since you were riding?
Well, it's changing a lot, and you know, even when I was riding from year to year, it would change a bit. And as you can see here, the small roads difficult to find if you come out a number of days before the race and before the arrows are up. It's so difficult to find the circuit here; it's almost impossible. Because when you race over, it looks so different with the the big crowds of people. When the riders go out to see it, it's usually marked a number of days before. But if you're out a number of weeks before, it's so difficult to find. And unless you're a rider or somebody who is in the area, it's impossible to remember at all. What I remember from my time competing is when we went out to train over summer, you had to have somebody who was from the area to get to get to know the route here. Otherwise, you would be going wrong all the time, and it's impossible just to find the route exactly.
In fact, that's why some of the locals, the Flandrians, have done so well. Peter van Petegem is a prime example, isn't he, Sean? I mean, he knew this area like the back of his hand. He lives right smack in the middle of this area of Flanders, and he used to go and train regularly on these hills. A double winner of the Tour of Flanders and a real favourite. A great guy. I mean, I like Van Petegem because he was quite happy to go and have a beer at night and not train too hard for the rest of the year. This was his raison d'etre, getting out, winning the Tour of Flanders or trying the Paris-Roubaix, stuff like that. Frank Hoy is the man doing the work on the front now for Saxo Bank. But I used to love him. He would never eat anything, never buy vegetables from a shop or a supermarket. Always had to grow his own. His old man used to help him in the garden. You could cycle past and see him working in the garden, growing his own veg or cleaning his bike or whatever. Real down-to-earth chap, Van Petegem. Still lives on the course. That's one of the great things about Tour of Flanders is you can go any day of the year, and that's assuming you can find them, of course. As Sean's just said, you can ride this route if you wanted to. They're all open roads, they're all public roads. It's not quite like the ones in Roubaix where some of them are protected. You can actually get out and ride everything, and you can often do. And there's a fabulous Tour of Flanders museum in Oudenaarde where we passed through today. Really worth going to. It's not just got the whole history of the Tour of Flanders. You might think it'd be a small little museum. It's not. It's fantastically dedicated to that particular race. Wonderful. And you can eat there. They've got a fantastic bistro. Last time I was in that bistro, and I haven't been there for a while, there were 5 world champions in there of one sort or another, all at the same time. Unbelievable. In fact, Jan Ras came in and I didn't even recognize him, and somebody had to say, it's Jan Ras over there. But he doesn't come out very much, but he'd come to see a few people. And if you go to the museum in Oudenaarde, fascinating, because the man who sells you the ticket to get in is Freddie Martins, who works there now. It's such embedded in the culture of Flanders. It's extraordinary. Mustn't forget, by the way, the women's Tour of Flanders is on today as well. For those of you watching in Great Britain, Nicole Cook riding for a British team now, a Great Britain team, and including Katie Kolkoff's there, young Emma Trott riding in there as well. So some of those girls getting first blooding really in the World Cups. Not riders like Trott. She's been riding a couple of them, but we'll see what Nicole Cook can do. This is the chase back on, I think.
The hang on. The
hang on. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's you can really see how difficult it is when you look at the Saxo Bank team up front. They're riding along there. Some time ago we see Stuart O'Grady looking around to see where his leaders were sitting, and to make it look so easy, but on the rear a lot of riders struggling here. As we can see, they're trying to form another echelon. There's a little bit of wind there when you see them over to the left hand side of the road, and suddenly they go to the right hand side of the road. They want to form another echelon because they're just hanging in the wind there, and it's so difficult if you find yourself back there. And again, that's so important for the big riders, the favourites here today. They need a number of teammates around them, even though they will be all up front. They should be all in front, but you have 2 or 3 teammates to keep you out of the wind conditions and keep you to the front, and that's so important.
Was that Adam Blythe? I think that was British rider Adam Blythe with the puncture for Omega Pharma. We'll just have to see a little bit. He's going to have to chase hard now. Look at this, as they're all splitting up, and the wind coming strongly, you'd have to say, from their right hand shoulder. Normally a tailwind blows them back in, but then of course you just wiggle around all over the place from now onwards, and the wind can have a big effect. It's already splitting up. This is going to be a cracking race, Sean. I tell you what, if you're watching this and you haven't already got the lefts in or the Duvals, go and get them, or you should send somebody out to get them. And just kick back, put your feet up, watch the best race in the world. Thanks to my producers in Paris for saying they'll get me a quick drink or two. It'll have to be left, I'm afraid. This is the race of the year. There is the museum. That's the museum on the left-hand side as they go through Oudenaarde. Under the flyover. Looks a little wet on the road here at the moment. I think there's been sort of showers, short sharp showers, and then the sun's coming out and drying it up. That's okay here. It's not going to be so good when they get to the cobbles, and some of them are really difficult. I mean, like the Paterberg and the Quermont. Well, not so much the Quermont, sorry, the Koppenberg. If you get water on that, it's absolutely dreadful. You've been caught out a couple of times. Plenty of shots of you, Sean, having to push your bike up the Koppenberg.
Yes, well, it's a climb that if you get bad conditions, it's so difficult to make it on your bike. And if you're not in the top 10 riders going into it, it's, you know, so often the case that a rider slips up in that position, in 10 to 12 position, and if that happens, well, then the road is blocked because it's already so narrow. And if you have to slow up behind because there's a rider down, you just never get moving again, and you have to just get off and walk and carry your bike. And I did it many times, and that will be very important today. As we can see here now, the road is wet, and if they get to the Oude Quaremont first, but then more so the Patersberg and the Quaremont more so, if they get a wet road with a shower just around the time they get there, nasty. It will make it very, very nasty.
Nasty indeed. Who is it? Somebody writing in on cycling.eurosport at yahoo.com. It was... who was it? Somebody was writing in saying, oh no, it was on Twitter saying, how on earth do they even walk up the Koppenberg? I have enough trouble walking across the kitchen floor in my cleats. With difficulty is the answer to that. You don't want to stop. It's 22% at the top. Just over 7 minutes is the gap now. Lots of teams sharing the front. Michael Barry is the rider on the front doing the work for Sky now. He's been there for a couple of times. We're going to take a short break. Back with our live coverage here on Eurosport of the Tour of Flanders from now right the way through to the end. Just about 4 hours of live cycling here, and next weekend, of course, it's Paris-Roubaix. And then we go straight into Amstel and Flèche-Wallonne and Liège, Bastogne-Liège. The best part of the year. 118 kilometers to go, and it's really getting active at the front here. Okay, we've done a little bit about the course. We've done a bit about the fact that you have to be in the right position at the right time when you get to the hills. The hills this year are Den Ast, they've already gone over. They're coming up toward the Kloosberg. The Kloosberg will be at 97 kilometers to go. Then there's the Nokkeberg. Oude Quaremont, Paterberg, which personally is my worst nightmare, the Paterberg, because there's a 90-degree bend at the bottom to get into it, and that really sort of takes out all the momentum. Even the few times I've ridden it, sort of gone over and ridden around the course, Koppenberg is, I find, not easier, but more easier to deal with because you've got a long run into it. You can see it up ahead of you. Of course, I'm not racing around it, and that makes it a lot more difficult. Steenbeck-Dries, then Teyenberg, Eichenberg, Molenberg, Leiberg, Berendries, the long section there. Ten Bosch, the Muur, which is utterly horrible when you get towards the end, really steep, and the Bosberg, which should never be underestimated, because if you can keep your powder dry until then, just asked Edvig van Hooydonk, you can really go for it there. The peloton streaming through Oudenaarde now, past the museum, under the railway lines, and Oudenaarde, a real hub for cyclists. A lot of riders from all nationalities live in Oudenaarde, train, work there. It's a real cycling town. To see a professional out here, nobody bats an eyelid. It's just absolutely normal. Let's have a look at the favourites then, Sean. The guys who are really liable to animate this race when we get to the big hills. The big favourites, according to the press, certainly, I mean, most people would be Fabian Cancellara, Tom Bonen, who's in great form. Can't discount Stan de Volder. He's won it twice in a row, and he really targets this race. For you, who are the big threats?
Well, yes, the ones you've mentioned, of course, and then you know, if you look at the past years and you look at the results in those style of races, Flanders, Roubaix, you have Fletcher, who is, you know, going well. We've seen him in the Newsblad earlier on in February, but also last week in E3 Prize in Harrowbeck, he was up there in the final with Bonin and Cancellara. They went away in the last 20 kilometres, and the three of them just rode away from everybody else. So he is surely in form. Gilbert, who is coming slowly. I don't think he may be good enough to win today, but you just never know with a rider like that. You know, he's won big ones like Paris Tours, Lombardy. So you know, he's going to be confident and he knows what to do in the final. Experience, I think, will count a lot. So maybe he might, you know, throw a surprise today. Then you look at Breschel, for example. He was very impressive during the week when he won a Travel Belgique last week. So you know, he's also in form. And you know, then there's, you know, there's a stack of riders who could be up there in the end. You have, you know, Manuel Quinziato from Liquigas. You have Chavanel from Quick Step. You know, he could get into a move if there's a rivalry between Bonin and Cancellara, which I could see in the end. We could see a small group going away, and the race could be won from that. And Chavanel, you know, a rider from Quick Step from Bonin's team, he could be the one who get into that the good move. And then you have, you know, Carsten Krohn, of course, from BMC. You have Bernard Eisel, who won Wevelgem during the week from Colombia. And you know, you have Quinziato, Benassi, Danielos, all from Liquigas. They were riding very well in the Pana. So you know, when you have three riders on the same team, if it comes to a situation where there's a breakaway going, I would surely expect to see a Liquigas rider in there. Hincapie, Linsky. Hincapie, of course, with Balan in the BMC team, with Lindsay from Astana, who was riding well.
Yeah, this is Maxim as opposed to his brother Valentin.
Maxim,
they're both riding,
who's been doing performances, and you know, there's 15 maybe riders who you could you know, put on the favourite list. But the big favourites, of course, as you said, are the ones who was in form and the ones who have won Roubaix or won that style of race before.
116 kilometres still to go. The gap is still coming down. Just two riders trying to push a little bit further on, but nothing of note. Feline and Vilas. Vilas a good sprinter, and Feline are from the Futon Servetto team. One of the best jerseys and the worst jerseys up against each other there. Sky always got a man towards the front. Everybody got a man up there now. Nice to see Arvidsson back, having broken his collarbone in Tour of Qatar. Just after helping win the team time trial, fell the next day, broke his collarbone. He's up there. He could be a key man. Whether he's got the form or not, I'm not sure. But he could be a key man certainly a little bit later on.
Yes, I don't think we will see him very late into the race.
No, just to help for others.
Yes, and when you see him now close to the front, it means that he's going to do the work, the domestic job early. But Michael Barry as well, riding here on the front. You know, it's a little bit too early to, you know, put your man out in front. And if I was a leader of a team and I see Barry on the front there for a number of kilometres, which he has been now, I would say to him, look, Michael, come back, get in behind, you know, a number of riders here and wait. But that's the style Barry is. He just loves riding on the front and towing the bunch along, and I don't think he's a great rider, you know, to hide himself until the the very important moment come, because if you could, you know, save his energy for much later, I think he would be a very important rider. He could go a long ways when it gets into the very important part of the race.
Well, the Brits riding today, if you're watching British Eurosport, Roger Hammond. Up at he's wearing the 201 jersey, so nominally the road captain for Cervelo test team, but Thor Hushovd is their big name. Of course, there is Fabian Cancellara, the Swiss national champion, world road time trial champion as well. Dan Lloyd, I think probably more of a late call-up than anything else for Cervelo test team. I know he was having to prepare to help Carlos Sastre in the Giro d'Italia, and he was a bit disappointed that perhaps he wouldn't get a go at some of his big favourites, which are the classics, but he seems to be included in this squad. Adam Blythe, young Adam Blythe, riding for Omega Pharma. I think it was him who had to have a wheel change as well. So we've got some good British interest.
and of course David Miller from
First time out, I think.
Garmin, you know, coming out of the pan with a great result. So it will be interesting to see, you know, what he can do today, because to win the Pana, you have to stay up there in the road stages. I know the time trial is his speciality, but you've got to get through very difficult 3 road stages before that. So it tells us that he's in good shape, although the Pana and the Tour of Flanders, you know, they're a totally quite a different race. You know, we see riders winning the Pana but never doing anything in the Tour of Flanders. It's so much more difficult distance-wise. I think, you know, 260 kilometres today, or 262 exact, where in the 3 days the Pana, of course, the maximum was around the 200 kilometre mark. But again, anybody up there in the 3 days of the Pan, they have to be in good shape. Have they got it, you know, to do the distance? That is the other question.
It looks like they're struggling a little bit into the wind. Holzmans is labouring a little bit, although he's doing a lot of work on the front. The pace has just dropped down a tiny amount. There's Thor Hushovd on the far left-hand side, well protected by about 4 or 5 Cervelo riders. That's a good shot, nice and steady. These are our breakaway riders. The men out ahead at the moment: Nicolas Rousseau of AG2R, Vincenti Garcia Costa of Caisse d'Epargne, Michele Merlo of Futon Cerveto, Olivier Bonner of Francis de Jeux, Mikhail Ignatiev of Katusha, David Boucher of Lambar Credit, Floris Gusenin of Skill Shimano, and Just van Lenen of Vaco Soleil. Six minutes 27 seconds is the gap. Superb coverage once again here of the Tour of Flanders. They always get it right, the Belgians. They always get good coverage. These are our breakaway men, all riding together. One compact group with 113 kilometers to go. It's the sort of calm before the storm, really. They've been over the first hill of the day, Den Ast, but that really counts for nothing. It's quite a long way out. And then they start coming in quick succession, starting with the Kloosberg, then the Knokkeberg, then Oud Quermont, Paterberg, Koppenberg, Steenbeckdries, Teenberg, Eichenberg, Molenberg, Leyberg, and so on until the end. Bosberg being the last one. And they're plugging away, these guys. We have time for questions. cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. Now, who was asking? Paul asking about Di2. Will they be more reliable or less reliable on these sort of cobblestones? Well, we'll ask Sky at the end of it, shall we? They're all on Di2, electronic shifters from Shimano. They should be absolutely fine. They've been testing them for a number of years, and they certainly wouldn't bring them into a race like this if they thought they were going to be unreliable. The same with Paris-Roubaix. They just simply wouldn't use them if it was going to be unreliable. Sky have a real agenda to stay up towards the front here. Must be for Juan Antonio Fletcher, who's in super form. Already won a good semi-classic win to his name this year. But we've seen Arvidsson at the front. Henderson's in good form as well. Whether he can get over the mountains or the hills, we don't know. Stannard, Geraint Thomas, there's some very strong riders in the squad. That's Dominic Rollin, the Canadian, on the front now for Cervelo. So clearly Cervelo think they have a reasonable chance with Thor Hushovd. He's got Jeremy Hunt policing him. I saw Dan Lloyd going back to the car, so he must be on bottle carrying duties at the moment. Lloyd was the first man to attack from the peloton last year in the Tour of Flanders, and great cheer went up in Great Britain, I think, to see him there. Whoa, no, more crashes. It's Huterovic just held up by this. Anybody gone really down? They're just being tangled up. It looks like Lecatre, who's picking his bike off of the floor. 164, Geoffrey Lecatre. Now it's a little bit more interesting. Lars Bach, I think, is the man who from HTC Colombia. Well, there's more than one Radio Shack. Irazar is the other one. Lecatre is sprinting off up towards the front. And one of the Cervelo riders just avoiding on the far right-hand side. Whoops, just tumbling over a little bit. And that is Lloyd, actually. That's Dan Lloyd. Look, on the far right-hand side in the black of Cervelo. No damage done, but almost tumbling over. And somebody in the crowd keeping him up as he pushes Lars Bach's bike aside and gets through. And clearly still has a problem though, because he stopped, so maybe a puncture, who knows. Bad luck for Lloyd. But 2 or 3 riders sheltering Thor Hushovd up at the front here, Sean, so clearly he thinks he's in a little bit better shape than perhaps we've seen him.
Yes, I think he's coming into better shape because he had a very poor start to the season. He was sick, I think a stomach bug he had, and it really upset the earlier part of his season. So, you know, the classics he has been suffering, but he's still improving, and you know, he's the leader of the Cervelo test team here, because with Hustler and Clear out, Hustler, of course, we remember from Paris-Nice, went out with a problem with his knee, so he had to take a long rest period, and Clear, he crashed in the E3 prize, I think it was, last week, so he's out, and that makes Hushovd like the sole leader, so they're certainly looking after him today, and you know, maybe he will come around a bit and get a better performance in today.
Maybe he's got to try for it anyway. That's the thing. Maybe he'll be in better shape next week for Paris-Roubaix. Unlucky last year, Thor Hushovd crashing towards the end to the Carrefour section last year in Paris-Roubaix. We have to see if he can pull everything off this year. I don't think he's in quite as good shape as he was last year, though. This is the group that's chasing back on now. There's Hutrovic in the champions jersey at the back. Belarusian there. Francis de Joux. And this is the group that got held up. There's some top sport Vlaanderen in there, 2 Kees de Pang riders in there. And charging on to try and get across to the peloton. Hard work now, though. 5:44 is the gap. Question we get asked all the time. I can't, there's a number of people, so forgive me if I don't read out your names, both on Twitter and on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. Do they use anything to take away the shock in these races? Not in this one. It's all a bit nervous here. They're all a bit all over the road. Wouldn't be surprised if they sort of collide again soon. Not in this one. Maybe heavier tyres, slightly wider tyre section, but not much on the Tour of Flanders. Not quite the same as Roubaix here, is it, Sean? I mean, I don't think you'd have set your bike up any differently for Flanders than most other races.
Depending on the weather conditions forecasted, if it's going to be a really bad day and you know, it's rain from start to finish, well, then you might put on a bit of a higher tyre, a better grip tyre, but normally you would just go out with the standard road tyres, where in Roubaix, of course, you know, they go for a much higher tyre, a special Paris-Roubaix tyre.
Not quite the same. I think here you're not hammering along lots of sections of cobbles that are flat at high speed, and big cobbles. What was the difference between the pavé here, the cobbles here, and the pavé in Paris-Roubaix?
Well, I think the pavé in Paris-Roubaix are, you know, much more. They're a much bigger pavé, very rough pavé to ride over. We have a few sections here in this one, but as you said, you know, a lot of the climbs, the pavé are on the climb, so you're going to a slow rate. Where in Paris-Roubaix, you're going at, you know, 45 kilometers per hour over a lot of the cobble sections. So you know, that's you're going to get a lot of shaking if you haven't got the right tyres in Roubaix. But you know, certainly in Roubaix, the sections are a much worse pavé sections, a lot of them, and when you talk about 50 kilometers, you know, there's probably 25 kilometers of them which are very bad sections.
Still 5.5 minutes is the gap. I haven't seen hide nor hair of Mr. Armstrong so far. 161. Is he just going to sit in the peloton today, Sean?
Well, yes, he's going to stay, you know, try and stay out of danger at this point, and it's all about, you know, staying up in the top 20, 30 riders, because as we can see here at the rear, there's a lot of movement. The riders are trying to move up, and if you find yourself back at the rear of the bunch, it's so difficult to get back up, and then we can see another crash here again, down they go. So, you know, it tells us how nervous it is. A big one here at the moment.
Oh dear, I just said wouldn't be surprised at all if they all start colliding again. Much nervousness going on in the middle of the peloton. Complete carnage here. That's Ivanov, Sergei Ivanov. Oh, that's not nice. That's not nice. That's looks like it's Salsi. Oh dear. number of riders out on the deck. Andre Grifko, who should be would be a bit of a threat later on. Grifko is the Astana rider on the ground, and that is not nice. And this is going to break things up absolutely, totally. And we're not sure if there's any big names caught in this. They should be up the front. They must get the warning signals out now, Sean, mustn't they? The big riders have to know that they can't be languishing around in the middle of the peloton. They've got to get up towards the front. It doesn't look as though it's the Euskaltel rider. Ishageri Isalsi is going to get up from this one particularly easy. Looks like a collarbone. But they have to stay up towards oh, it was at the front. Yes. My word, it's Grifko. Oh.
Very much to the front, and
absolutely,
that's the problem in this race. When it starts gets nervous, everybody is so tense, and you know, it just happens right to the front. And we could see there it was, you know, very much to the front of the bunch, and that's the risk of Paris-Roubaix. That's the dangers in this, or sorry, the Tour of Flanders, and that is the risk in this race, because everybody just want to be up there on that in the top 30 riders, and that's what you get.
Gosh, and Andre Grifko sitting on his backside, being pushed along by the weight of riders coming in behind him. That's not good at all. I did wonder why Grifko is involved in that, because he should be the sort of rider who would be up towards the front. He's got an outside chance of doing things, Andre Grifko, in this race. Not good. Not good at all. It's a very nervous race so far, Sean.
Yes, and you know, some years it is like that, as we see David Miller here trying to get back up, and is that Tyler Farrar, I think, with him.
Yeah.
You know,
Steve Kozzer in there as well,
yes,
somewhere.
Coming up from a previous crash, and you know, you can see the time it's taken to get to the front. You know, they've been chasing for a long time, and then suddenly there's another crash, and you get held up once again. And when you find yourself, you know, back in the tail end of the race, it's so difficult to get back into the front.
That's Cav there by the back. That looks like Mark Cavendish. Typically head slightly to the left. There he is, Mark Cavendish back here as well, and clearly been held up by something. Doesn't seem to have hit the deck in any way. Looks like he's with is it Rosler he's with? Sebastian Rosler, great big slightly almost bald-headed, shaven-headed man. In front is the Belgian Sebastian Rosler. And they've got back onto the main group, but Cavendish seems to have kept himself out of trouble at the moment. Just hiding behind two Radio Shack riders. Rosler's one, Erata is the other one who's getting back on. He's the smaller rider just ahead on the left-hand side in the red. But it's very, very nervous out here at the moment. It doesn't seem to be too much wind catching them out though, Sean. It just seems to be nerves.
Yes, it's just that the race is nervous. At the moment, the wind condition is not too bad. We can see the way they're riding along. But again, you know, depending on the direction we are going, it could be a headwind for the moment. And it just turns so much here. You know, you're in that area, the same area, and you just turn about all the time. So, you know, it's also a danger one here. You can turn into a section of wind. And if you get 2 or 3 kilometres where the wind is really side on, it can cause a lot of problems as well. But I don't think there's a major amount of wind today, so that's certainly not the problem at the moment. It's just that, you know, everybody's getting a bit nervous here, and riders trying to move up, and it's so tightly packed, as we see there when the crash some moments ago. You know, the road is fully packed with riders, and there's always riders trying to move up a little bit on the outside, and you know, that's what happens. And it's going through that period now until we get to the climbs where it will pull out the bunch a bit further on. It will settle again.
Three teams very keen to stay at the front of the moment. Cervelo, Sky and Saxo back. That's Stewie O'Grady getting some fuel in. And we'll be back very shortly. Welcome back. Live pictures here with 104 kilometres to go, and the peloton split all over the road now thanks to a couple of crashes. The man who's chasing back on here, trying to get in a decent position, is Lars Boom, getting himself back up to this peloton. And Lars Boom has had a very good early season, pushing on, getting his teammate to keep going and bring him up towards the front. Lars Boom could do something in this, you know, although it's a bit, some of the cobble climbs are a bit steep. But even so, it's going to be a testy day today. Lots and lots of crashes so far that we've seen. We know there's been some earlier as well, but not difficult ones, but there's been some nasty ones so far. Thankfully, with the exception of possibly one real injury to Isagari Navsti, Gorka Nausti from the Euskaltel squad. I'm not sure that there's been too many problems so far. There's Lance Armstrong in the middle of your shot. Frank Hoy is the rider from Saxo Bank on the right-hand side of your screen there, the Dane. And Saxo Bank very keen to keep riders towards the front. Ivanov, Russian champion, Sergei Ivanov, trying to get back again. He was been involved in this crash. He's another man who could do really well today if he's in super shape. Never discount Ivanov. He's a very, very strong rider. Winner of Amstel last year, was it? Or Flesh, I can't remember. Offhand?
Amstel.
Amstel, thought
yes.
It was.
And of course a bit more pressure on him today because
yes.
With Pozzato not taking part, his stomach bug during the week, he's gone back to rest up a bit, and so for Ivanov, he is, I would reckon he's the protected rider. He's the leader of the team today, so that bit more pressure on him to put a performance today.
Yep, and he's got back to the back of this group. He's a tough old bird, and he'll work his way up towards the front. That's not the best place to do it, though, on the inside on that corner. Look how narrow it is here on this section at Varant. It's 2 kilometres now of this. Got to keep themselves in the right shape. Stuart O'Grady, far left-hand side, with the cascade underneath the helmet. Absolutely vital in this situation. He knows these roads like the back of his hand. He has super experience in the classics, as does Frank Hoy, by the way, who's at the front. That's why one of the reasons they hired him, Frank Hoy. He's been around for a long time. Has never really pulled off the big one. Would like to have done, but Michael Barry doing an awful lot of work on the front, keeping the pace high. These are the strong men now. Barry, quick look over by Stuart O'Grady to see why he's working so hard, probably. And also Kevin Holzmans of the Quick Step squad. They're just keeping the pace going at the front. You can see the tension in their bodies just beginning to rise. They're starting to know that they've got to get positioned now for this next climb, which is the Kloosberg. It's coming very shortly. Within 5 kilometres, they're going to be hitting it. They've got to be there in the right position. Dom and Barry, I'm glad you've stayed up burning the midnight oil. We go out live to Australia now as well on Eurosport World, and we're glad you're enjoying it as well. This is the best race of the year, in my humble opinion. It is. The weather pretty good today, Sean. Simon Lamb writing in saying, when you get really affected by weather in this sort of situation and it affects your race, what do? Do you just file it mentally and get on with it?
Well, yes, you have to get on with it. If you're one of the big favourites, well, then you certainly have to get on with it. But it makes the race that much more difficult physically, and also more dangerously as well, because we see, as we've been seeing for the last number of kilometres, the crashes in the wet conditions. It makes it just so much dangerous, and on the cobble sections, it makes it very dangerous on the flatter sections, and then on the climbs it's so difficult to make it up the climbs on your bike unless you get a good run. The Patersberg, the Koppenberg, you have to be really in the front, and it's only maybe 10 riders make it over when it's really wet conditions. So it is important. I think the riders would rather to have dry conditions, and if you're in the rain all day, it just makes the race so much more physically demanding.
This section of cobblestones here, I remember riding across this with a group of journalists and guests, with Johan Museo, a double winner, multiple winner of the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. Been off his bike for a bit of a time, and he was carrying a bit of timber, shall we say. And some of the journalists, I've got to say, were out to give him a right kicking. And he rode around here, and he was hanging off the back, and there was lots of grinning journalists. We did several of the hills, including Molenberg and Kloosberg, and then we got to the Paterberg, which I said is really difficult because it's got a 90-degree bend at the bottom. And he just stuck it in the big ring and stuck it in the 12 sprocket and just shot up the outside of everybody, as if to say, and just waited at the top. He got a drink at the top, but he just waited at the top as if to say, right, that's enough of that, lads. That's how you really do it, and the rest of us really do it. So if you want to play games, fine. There was a lot of raised eyebrows, and you really get a sense, if you're standing at the side of something like the Patersberg or the Koppenberg, just how strong these guys are. There's a fabulous piece of film in the museum of Eddy Merckx, and it was, who was it who was going up against? Roger de Vlaminck and Eddy Merckx going up, just looking at each other at the bottom of the Koppenberg. Nobody else is there. They've got to it first, and they just stick it in the biggest gear they possibly can, and they just try and outride each other going up in the wet. Unbelievable, really unbelievable. Super strong. What do you need to win this race, Sean? Sorry, that might be a sore point because there's a small grin there. You never actually won this race. Would you have given over any of your other races to have won this race?
Yes, certainly I would have made a swap with some of the other classics. 3 times second, this one. It's a race that was my style of race, Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, of course, and just that it didn't click for me. I had maybe a little bit of the look maybe that I needed in the final. I didn't have it, and riders just actually slipped away. But you need to be this style of rider, a real strong rider. As you talked about Museo, a big strong rider who can ride very well over the cobbles, the short hills. He can be very explosive, really strong. And you have to be a classic rider. We've talked so many times about it in the past. You have riders who can win stages in the Tour of France, and they can win stages in all the big tours and all the major races. But the classics, 260k, and such a demanding course. That's why you have to be able to do it in the end. And it's really the final 50 kilometers where you have to be strong, and you have to be able to match the other big favourites and stay up there. And that's what you've got to have.
Interesting way of getting through. The Belgians are so used to this, though. There's a lot of teams trying to keep their men up towards the front. You can see Philippe Gilbert there in the white with a slightly blue and white helmet. And the yellow handlebar tape, that's the one you want to look for. Philippe Gilbert.
With Leif Host just in front of him.
Another man we shouldn't discount.
Also another man who could do a performance today, but not performing greatly at the moment. But again, he's coming slowly, and this race today is his style of race. Maybe Paris-Roubaix is a better one where he performs. I think his best performance had been in Roubaix, but again, you can never count those riders with that talented rider out of it today.
Yeah, he always seems to slightly get it wrong. Sebastian Rosler of Radio Shack just taking some nutritional while he waits for a tyre. All these riders, pretty much all these riders riding, I think all of them actually riding tubs. And this is what you can do on a tub that you cannot do on, you can see the bike still wobbles around, but you can't do it on a clincher so much. A clincher runs the risk of rolling off. The tub that's glued on, you can just continue rolling along a little bit. But it's not easy for Sebastian Rosler, and he'll wait to get his car up as soon as possible. This is bit of a pain. Rosler, who could be quite good a little later on.
Doesn't want the wheel.
No, clearly not. Doesn't want the wheel from a teammate. Anyway, it was Irasa offering him the wheel.
Again, it's the moment where there's a little bit of calm here, as we can see, and Rosler, he would be experienced, very much experienced in those style of races, and he knows that he can afford just to wait for the car. It's not going to make any great difference taking the wheel from Irazar, so just keep on rolling there on the flat and allow the car time to get up. And again, it's so difficult for the team directors here to get through because of the narrow roads. When you're back in the cavalcade, and depending on your number, if you're back in 15th position, it takes quite a while to get to the rear of the main bunch.
It does indeed. Well, our men still out ahead. Let's just remind you that you've got 8 men in a breakaway. Still out 3 minutes and 30 seconds ahead as they come towards the Kloosberg. It's Rousseau, Garcia Costa, Merlot, Bonner, Ignatieff, Boucher, Goossenen and Just van Lelen. As if by magic, there we are. 97 kilometers for these guys. They are coming upon the Kloosberg, and we'll see this first of the significant hills. Now this is where the action starts. From now right the way through to the end, it's one after another. There'll be a lot of jostling for positions. There'll be a lot of people trying to get to the hills first. I like the Lion of Flanders covers to the helmets for some of these guys, because it was raining earlier on. That is the Lion of Flanders on the yellow background there. And you'll see loads of those being waved around, flags of those being waved around. Trying to get to the hill first. Some of the riders from Flanders, or the Belgian teams, have managed to get their helmets done up that way as well by the look of it. Nice, like it, wouldn't mind one of them, they're good. This is not a cobbled climb, is it, this one? This is one of the asphalt climbs. Not too many of them. They did. How many of the? What was the sort of percentage, Sean, when you were riding between asphalt and cobbles? Did you many? Are there many significant climbs on the Tour of Flanders that are asphalt?
Well, the ones in asphalt that you get in the end of the race, and over the years, as we talked about, it changes about a bit, and some of the climbs you go up maybe 70, 80 kilometres, 100 kilometres on the finish. Now that you can be getting them later in the race, and that's because this race turned around a lot in the same area in the final. For a moment, 50, 60, 70 kilometres maybe, and the asphalt ones can be very difficult in the final when you get them in the final 50 kilometres. But I think it's the percentage-wise, it's much the same as it has been. For many years they try and keep quite a percentage of cobble climbs in it, and the amount of cobbles overall in the race are much the same as they were maybe 15, 20 years ago. So they just when they lose a climb with cobbles, which is covered over by tarmac macadam, they go and find another one. As in Roubaix, is the same situation, and they're also trying to conserve the cobble climbs now. And as they're doing it in Roubaix, also the section of cobbles, they've been doing it for many years.
That's the Futon Cerveto squad just dropping off the back here, or the kit dropping off the back. And the rider is Michele Merlo, as you can see. A little bit of trouble keeping up, but he's been out there all the time. He was one of the original 5 riders who went away. They were joined by 3 more. 3 minutes and 12 seconds is the gap. I'm told on Twitter it's not a lion of Flanders, it's a fire salamander. Well, I've never heard of that. And every Flanderian I've ever spoken to says it's the Lion of Flanders. In fact, Johan Museeuw was known as the Lion of Flanders, as were a lot of other riders before him, including the great Rick Schotter, who won this, who was actually on the podium for this race more than any other rider. Rick Schotter between 1940 and 1952. I think he was 16 times on the podium, something like that. That can't be right, it was only 12 years. So how many times was he on the podium? But anyway, he was certainly on the podium a lot of times. Rick Schotter, known as the original Lion of Flanders. A tough guy. Died, what, 5, 6 years ago now, Schotter?
Yes, in 2004 he passed away, and he won in 1942 and 1948. But he was a rider, a very strong rider, but had no sprint at all, and I can see why he was on the podium many times.
More problems. It's been very nervous so far. Here we go again. Look, ooh, tangling up with each other. Kevin Horstmans, well, he was dropping back a little bit, having done his section on the front. I think his rear mech had been collided with, or maybe he had a bit of a sticky change or something, and that just slowed his progress down. And Danilo Wies, the Swiss rider, was the man who collided with him at the back. There he is, just getting into the back of this peloton. There is the Lion of Flanders on the side of the road. This race started as a response, really, to the Walloon Classics, the Ardennes Classics, back in 1913. Won by De Man, was the first man to win in 1913. It was a hell of a lot longer than it is now. 360 kilometers, I think it was, something like that. Anyways, well over 300 kilometers. Only 27 riders finished it. And it was run in appalling conditions, and over the years there have been some dreadfully appalling conditions and some absolutely memorable moments as Hutorovic begins to really suffer. Unsurprisingly, can be strong, but he's got more of a sprint on him than anything else, Hutorovic. And backwards he goes rather than forwards. Looks like Horstmans, who's perhaps beginning to regain some ground here. Up he goes. It is indeed Kevin Horstmans working his way back up towards the front. He won't relish the extra effort he has to put in, but he's needed definitely towards the front. Saxo Bank very, very keen to keep control of this pace here, Sean, and Sky equally so.
Yes, very much thanks to Saxo Bank. Also, a number of Sky hovering around here, and it's a great position to be in, to have a team that can control the race. But if you control too early, it's very possible you can pay the price later.
Welcome back. 92 kilometres. They've been over the Kloosberg. The next hill to come will be Knottenberg, with just about 8 kilometres to go. Hulsman's still having trouble, so clearly he needs a bit of a change. Done a fair amount of work already, but he was he's unhappy banging those bars. So I think a rear derailleur problem for Hulsman's. Waiting for the car to come up. And he's a key man for Tom Bonan, of course, and also for various others. Oh, somebody's off again. So this is another fall by the look of it. I'm just trying to work out who the rider is. Ooh. Kaczynski. Ouch. What has he done? We don't know. Unless he's collided with that sign in front of him. That wouldn't be at all surprising. I mean, look at that thing. It's stuck out in the middle of the road compared to everything else.
So much street furniture in Belgium. It's it's just growing all the time, and you can see there, the signpost. It just juts out onto the road, and that is the problem. I think he just touched that, and it's the road here is so dangerous. If you do not know the road, the way the little islands, they stick out, the road signs are sticking out. You have to know, you have to race here, and if you haven't raced here, it's so dangerous, as we can see.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look. What happens to him? We don't know, actually. No, he definitely collided with that sign. There he is. Look. Ouch. That is gonna hurt. Thomas Fuchler in the middle for Bouygues Telecom in the blue, looking comfortable. 91 kilometres still to go. It's a massive amount of time still to go, and nearly all the big hills to come. The next couple are going to be far more telling. Knottenberg next, the Old Quermont, and then the Paterberg. Just give us a quick rundown there, Sean, on what those hills are like. First of all, the Knottenberg. It's what sort of hill is it?
Well, again, they're just coming so close together. That is the most difficult thing of this, because you go to the Knottenberg, then the Oude Quermont, immediately the Patersberg, the Koppenberg. In a very short space there, there's so much of difficult climbs to got over. That is, that's the difficult section here, and to get through that, and then as you go on, they come pretty quickly, and there's not a lot of flat section in between. So it's about being able to stay up there, stay out of danger up till now, and get in a good position as you go into these climbs, who they follow very, very quickly, one after the other.
And what about the Old Quermont, which is not the next one coming up, but the one afterwards? That's a bit of an elbows out, you've got to stay at the front sort of job. If you lose it on the Old Quermont, then you might as well go home.
Well, if you go on to the Old Quermont too far in the bunch, well, then it's difficult, because there are definitely going to be splits there. And again, it's in that top 20-30 riders maximum. That's where you have got to be on the Quermont, and to get over the Quermont, it should not be difficult for the favourites, because at this point in the race, we're still with 90 kilometres to go here. They're not going to be suffering at this point, and if you are suffering as a favourite, well, then you're going to be in problems later on. So it's just all about positioning, and just keep yourself out of danger, and get through this section without having to make any great effort, where you get caught behind in a split and you have to chase to get back in, because that's something you will pay for later. So it's all about just staying up in that top 20-30 riders, and getting through this section without any difficulty, and without getting into any panic area.
Thanks for the link, whoever sent it to me, I can't remember, for the helmets there. That's Laser Helmet making those painted Lion of Flanders helmets. They are cool. I like them. I shall have to get onto Laser and get one. You've got Laser helmets in your team, haven't you?
Yes.
Do your Belgians ride with a Lion of Flanders on?
Well, I haven't seen them yet, but they're probably for the big teams today. We might get them a bit later.
Yeah, get them a bit later down the line. That's it. They're cool. Aero shell cover, pre-Flanders. That's right. Laser helmets debut snap-on aero shell cover for their helmet, so it goes on over the top. That's brilliant. So you need a laser helmet, and then you can get the cover. Well, there we go. We've got some. You can write in, of course, on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. We've still got time. The hostilities have not really started yet. Lewis Champion from Perthshire, 12 years old, just joined the Tay Titans Bike Club, saying, my dad's taking me to see Paris-Roubaix next weekend. We'll be the ones with the big Union Jack. There you go. What's the best places to see it? Well, we'll do two halves of that question. If you're ever coming here, Lewis, this is one of the best races to come and see as a spectator, because you can move from hill to hill, assuming you plan it in advance and you've got a car. You can come and see them on the hill, rush back down the bottom, jump in the car, go to the next one, or you know, leapfrog them. As you can see guys here, they run from one hill to another. It's the most amazing event to watch, because they wind in and out all the time. So Tour of Flanders is a fantastic spectacle. What do you reckon is the best place as a first-time viewer of Paris-Roubaix, which is next weekend?
Well, I think you have to find if you're going just to one section, well then maybe Arenberg is a good area. But if you want to, as we see more riders falling over.
Oh dear, more people going onto the deck. The Milram rider is Service Carnarvon. Should know better, Service. A winner of Paris-Roubaix, no less. Service Carnarvon, as we were talking about Paris-Roubaix. Sorry, you were saying, Sean.
Yes, if you're going to Paris-Roubaix and you just want to see it at one point, well then maybe the Ford of Arenberg is a good area. What else? It's it's a spectacular section, and but there's so many people, and if you want to move around, which you can do in Paris-Roubaix also, because it turns about for a long time in that in a 50-60 kilometers distance, so it's possible to see it on many occasions, but it is getting more difficult. And as you mentioned with the Tour of Flanders here, to go to different areas. I was over last week to see a Travel of Belgique and then the E3 prize in Harelbeke on last Saturday week, and it's there's so many people out there, and to move around. I did that with some guests we had from visiting on behalf of the team we had in the race. It's just crazy. There's so many people getting from one point to the next. It's impossible to move at times, and Paris-Roubaix it's much the same situation, I would say.
Look at this. This is the problem. Get stuck at the back and you're in trouble. Kevin Hulsmans, maybe he's had attention from the team now, because he's still right at the back here, number 5 on the left-hand side. He's looking lean, actually, Hulsmans. Looking in good shape. But chasing the game at the moment, because he's had mechanical problems. Service Carnarvon is the small rider in the Milram colours right at the back. Look at this. Saxo Bank control the event here. That's extraordinary. The whole team almost across the front. Gustave Glasson on the far left-hand side of your screen. There he is. Stuart O'Grady in the middle. Frank Hoy next to him. And I think it's Casper Klostergaard on the far right-hand side. Also Matti Breschel sticking up towards the front. Surely they must be working here for Cancellara, Sean, because Cancellara is sort of hiding himself a little bit further back, but Breschel still up towards the front.
Yes, well, Breschel was sitting, much further.
Oh, look at this.
Yes, at a standstill here, and that's the problem when you're behind here with this the narrow road. It's going to slow up, and when you have to stop, you lose so much time. But yes, Breschel, we see that he's sitting a bit more to the fore than Cancellara. But for the moment, you need to sit back a bit. Tom Bonin, we haven't seen him at all, and that's the way you've got to do it. You've got to sit back there in 15, 20 position. And you're getting pulled along, you're not in the draft at all, and you save that little bit of energy which can be so important in the final, and that's where the big riders, the experienced riders can do it so well. And who better than Bonin, and Cancellara, he's a little bit further off the front as well. But the Saxo Bank, I think again last week we see him in the races. They were very, very dominant, and compared to Quick Step, I think Quick Step are suffering as a team, as a block, and that was the case last weekend in the E3 prize. Bonin was on his own very earlier on in the race at crucial time with 80, 90 kilometres to go, and Saxo Bank definitely they're the stronger team in block.
Must be that's clearly why I think Kevin Holsmans is so banging his handlebars, because he's got a mechanical problem. He's obviously in good shape at the moment, needs to be up there to help Tom Bonen, isn't up there, can't be up there because the bike is malfunctioning, and they're really pushing the pace along now, Saxo Bank. Frank Hoy doing a super job here, pushing hard, beginning to string things out. They're getting into the real meat and potatoes of the race now. We'll take a break. Welcome back. The peloton is now split nicely into 3 groups with 2 minutes and 10 seconds to our 8 breakaway riders still. It's really hotting up. We're heading towards the old Quaremont. This is the first of the big cobbled sections. You can see they're split along the road. That's the main section. All the big favourites, we hope, will be in there. If anybody's had any trouble, it's bad luck. They're in Berkham at the moment. Spinning around this right-hand bend. Whoops, up over the side goes, is that Ivanov? It looks like it. It's Martin Reimer, the young German champion, doing the work on the front for Cervelo. Clearly they want to take a hand now and push the pace along a little bit. Jeremy Hunt is in this group. There's Daniel Lloyd, second in line at the moment. Just ahead of him is Martin Kohler, I think it is. Sky up there towards the front as well. I think I see Fletcher's face lurking. But Saxo Bank clearly beginning to suffer now, because Frank Hoy on the far right-hand side has been pushing along and has now got the face on. The race face is there. Stewie O'Grady on the left-hand side of the screen for Saxo Bank. Sky's Juan Antonio Fletcher is just lurking behind here as well. This is the first of our breakaway riders being brought back, is it? It's looking like it. Oh no, it's McEwen off the back of another group. Robbie McEwen, I should have told by the Australian champion's bands on the bottom of his jersey. Hinkepi on the wheel of Tom Bonen going around that corner. It's so difficult, some of these corners. How much concentration do you need in this race?
Well, at times you need 100%. Other times, if you're experienced, you know, you can relax a little bit. But you know, there's when you get into the final 100 kilometers, there's not a lot of time where you can relax. You have to concentrate all the time, because the road is, you know, very technical, narrow roads, turning all the time, and then all the cobble sections and the cobble climbs throwing in. You have to, you know, really concentrate on what's coming up. And if you know the road, the route very well, well, then you can relax a bit. But if you do not, you have to memorize it, you know, from a ride over it, and that's something where you have to really concentrate big time.
There's Matty Bratchell in the middle, and that's Stuart O'Grady. Now, what does this hill really mean? We talk to Philippe Gilbert as our breakaway riders are on it.
Le Quaremont fera toujours son rôle et il sera
the Quaremont plays an exceptional role. It's a very strategic spot. This is where riders lose a race. It's not a place where the race is won, but it's a place where the race can be lost. It'll be important to be well placed. You've got to be at the front, in particular at the top, because starting from there, that's when the battle really gets going. It's difficult to get back in the race. Well, that's certainly the assessment of Philippe Gilbert. Would you agree with that? You've got to be up to, you said that already, you've got to be up towards the front. If you're down the back, then you're always chasing the game.
Yes, and he mentioned, you know, at the front, at the top. Well, if you're not at the close to the front and the bottom, you're certainly not going to be there at the top, because you know, it's not like a long climb in the Tour of France where it goes on for 8 or 10 kilometers. If you're a great climber, you can, you know, gradually work your way up through the bunch, but it's not possible here, because we can see this section here, you know, it's narrow, it's still on the asphalt road, and you know, when you look at the route book, it says 1.5 kilometers, but that's only the cobble section. You know, there's almost 1 kilometer with drags up where we see the bunch a moment ago, so it's all, I reckon it's 2.5 kilometers of a climb when you include the bottom section, which not is really on the route book. So it is a climb where you have to be in front, in the top 20-25 riders going onto it, and then if you've got the legs, and hopefully you can stay up there, stay close to the front as you get over the top, because then you go on you know, to the Patersberg and the Koppenberg, and they are really steep, short, but you know, they are vital climbs. If you attack them too far back in the bunch, well, then your race can be over.
It's Saxo Bank controlling the pace of the peloton at the moment. Brashel, you can see, is the first of the red jerseyed riders here. Then behind the other red jerseyed rider with the black shorts is Fabian Cancellara, aiming to be one of only 11 men, he would be if he got there, to win all 3 early season classics, Milan-San Remo, Paris-Roubaix, and this particular race of the Tour of Flanders. Nicolas Rousseau is the big rider from AG2R being taken back as Stuart O'Grady comes up onto his left-hand shoulder and straight past him on the Old Quermont. It's not exactly wide, is it, the Old Quermont? And it's Saxo Bank setting the pace. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 back is Juan Antonio Fletcher in the sky colours, looking very calm. Stewie does a brilliant job here. I wonder if he'll ever get his chance to do something for him again. He's quite happy doing the domestique works, and then occasionally he gets the chance to really shine. He's won Paris-Roubaix, of course.
And we can see Matthew Heyman there, also from the Sky team, a very experienced rider in the classics, and I think he's a one which could be important. He's just behind Stewie here at the moment. Important for Fletcher that he can go on, because he's a rider that has been in teams, with Rabobank for many years. They was with Freyr, I suppose, also with Decker, and he's I think a big strong rider, but very experienced in this race.
Just a quick bit of news. I understand, the feed coming through on Twitter, I haven't got the full results yet. The Grace Verbeek wins the women's Tour of Flanders ahead of Marianne Vos. So that's the 1-2 for the women's. But if you've got a full, I haven't got time to go and have a look at it actually, so if you've got a full rundown of the top 5, give us a shout please. And any of the British riders, wherever they came, let us know. It's spokesmen, SPOKESMEN, or cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. If Sky pulled this one off, Sean, if Juan Antonio Fletcher could pull this one off, or any of the Sky riders, that'd be a massive coup, wouldn't it, for a first-time team?
Certainly would be, to put a new team together and to come out and win, one of the major classics. It would be a major coup, because first of all, to put a team together, to get them to work together, not easy in its first year, and we've seen in the past with some teams do that. It's rare that it works in the first year, and I think the Sky team has worked very well up till now. They've won some very good races, but today is, I think, it's the monument, and that's the one that all the big riders want to win. And certainly Fletcher, he's been knocking on the door for a number of years within the Rabobank team, and if he could do it today, it would be amazing. And he started off well this season, winning the Newsblad in February. He's a rider who seems to have a lot of talent, but sometimes his tactics maybe not the best in the crucial moments of the big ones.
Absolutely. There's him on the right hand side, mouth agape. Fletcher's just behind him, as you can see in this almost like pinky purple lensed glasses. Third in line at the moment. O'Grady's really hammering this one. He really is giving people some hard times here. 2 Australians up towards the front. O'Grady and Heyman just behind him. Then Fletcher. Then it looks like Frank Hoy, maybe. Then Bretchel. Then Cancellara. And then we'll start seeing some of the other big. Then Hincapie, I think. Now, where is Bonin?
In about 10th or 12th position there, I see him going through.
And everybody jostling on this one. You can't afford to be caught out here. And the old Quermont. It's a long one as well, the Quermont. Not an easy ride at all. It's 2.2 kilometers of a ride, and if you get caught out, this is exactly what's happened. It's going to hold everybody up now. They're really strung out on this one now. And there'll be a lot of riders here who think, well, I'm in this position, I'm not particularly enjoying it. If you're feeling in poor shape by this time, Sean, then it must be just hell, thinking you've got still another 12 hills to go.
Yes, if you're getting into difficulty on this one as a favourite, well then you're going to start asking yourself, what's happening here? I'm not on a good day. But you still battle on, and you try and just stay in there, stay up in the front, and get through the sections coming through, as we said after this one, the Patersberg and the Kuppenberg. And if you get that over with that very crucial moment, and you can stay up there with the big favourites, well then you can come around. And it's often the case the big favourites go through a bad period at maybe the most difficult part of the race, or at another point during the day, and you can get through and you can come through and, you know, do a very good performance, maybe win the race or get on the podium. So it's not an unknown fact that, you know, you have to be very strong mentally. If you go through a very bad patch, you cannot throw in the towel, because I think, you know, all the big favourites, they get a taste of that sometime in their career in some race.
This is amazing. The whole group here is just split to pieces. O'Grady has done an enormously good job, as have Heyman on the front, of splitting the peloton completely to pieces here. Everybody, this is Garcia Costa. And the remaining part of the group of the breakaways. I'm not quite sure what the Astana riders are doing in there. Have they doubled back on each other themselves, I wonder? Who knows? But look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups on the road. They've done a lot of damage at the front here, Sean. There's, what, about 25, 30 riders here at the front? Maybe a few more.
Yes, and that's you know, that's the Koppenberg. If there's riders, you know, in the bunch there, they're not comfortable and not maybe, you know, the best bike handlers on the cobble sections on the quarter mount, then they're going to gaps appear, and it's so difficult for riders to get by, and that's the time you have a lot of groups on the road, as we see. And now as we go to Patersburg with our what's left of our breakaway riders, a great position to be in here when you come with 5 or 6 riders in front. Yeah. You have a bit of room here and you can get it over with, but they're going to pay the price because they've been out there so long. And I think when we see now the bunch coming around the corner here, as you said, a very, very tight corner where you turn up, it's, you know, they're going to come at a very, very fast rate.
This doesn't give you any idea of what this is like, these riders here. They're just sitting in there pedaling up it. This is so steep, you would not believe. It's about 1 in 5 towards the top. Getting out of the saddle, and they don't look as though they're really trying, but it's unbelievably hard work. This is the hill I was saying when Museu, out on that press day, just stuck it in the big room, went straight up the outside just to show people how it can be done, and silence well, wipe the smiles off somebody's faces. But anyway, it is incredibly steep, and they're getting towards it now, the main peloton. You can see the crowds are enormous at the Tour of Flanders. They've done a good job this breakaway. There we are. Look, there's the right-hand bend as they go into it, the Patersburg. It's Stuart O'Grady hammering it at the front now. Saxo Bank really trying to take control completely. Breschel looking cool, looking calm, looks over his shoulder. It's Fabian Cancellara and Juan Antonio Fletcher next to each other. Then just behind, Tom Bonen in the Belgian champions jersey. As you can see, the Belgian flag at Lars Boom on his wheel there from Rabobank.
Leif Holst on the left.
Yep, in the white Leif Hoster. With the black and red shorts. And it's now Breschel setting the pace towards the front. And it looks like Bonen who's sitting in the wheel. Matti Breschel, Tom Bonen, Juan Antonio Fletcher, Fabian Cancellara is about a bike length back to Lars Boom now, who's suffering on this very steep hill. Thor Hushoft trying to stick with it. George Hincapie in the American Champions jersey riding for BMC here, trying to put the pressure on. We're seeing the favourites showing their hand. It's not over yet, Sean, but they're just showing who's strong and who isn't.
Yes, well, I think Breschel there, you know, he's just upped the pace a bit, and he's caused a bit of problems. O'Grady, of course, after doing a lot of riding there, in difficulty, but I think we'll see him getting back to the front again because he's not far off. But a lot of the favourites showing their face there, and you know, that's one, as you said, it's very, very steep at the top, and you have to be really to the front, because if somebody have a little bit of a mechanical problem, then you have, you know, to slow down and difficult to get moving again. So all the favourites really being very, very careful and staying right in the top 10 over this one.
No sign of Philippe Gilbert up towards the front at the moment. We didn't see him go over, but I mean, he could have been, but he's just a little bit further back. There's Tommy Fokler in the blue of Bouygues Telecom, just going around the outside of what looks like Ian Stannard of Sky. And there's Sergei Ivanov. Ivanov just in the middle of the pack. Kurt Arsla Arvidsson going through the shot. I haven't seen Balan either, but no doubt he'll be somewhere towards the front. Ooh, this is hard work. Really suffering now. Some of these, Frank Hoy just really beginning to suffer on the back, but he's done a lot of work on the front. At the very, very back of your shot here, number 225, Steve Hunau. of skill, Shimon. He's at it. He's had it. Cooked for the day. And Bonen, Hincapie. Keen. Well, at this point, Sean, if you find yourself in a very elite group like this, what do you do? Push on or just sit up and wait and try? And it's just a bit of a test.
Well, I think as we see here, if you're in a position as we see Bowen there, and he was given the signal for Fletcher to come through, get everybody rolling through here, because they have only what 10 riders here, and you know, considering the next climb, it's a very important one, the Koppenberg. So roll on here, try and get everybody working, everybody to do their little bit on the front and share the pace setting and get to the part as well, because if you slow up here, you allow a lot of riders to come back, and then you're in the same position going on to the Patersberg. You have a bigger group of riders, and it gets more dangerous, you know, to get up the climb. The bigger the group is, the more dangerous it gets, because if there's somebody has a little bit of problem getting up the climb, loses momentum, loses his rhythm, then you could end up a lot of riders having to walk the final 100-150 meters of the Koppenberg.
Koppenberg, yeah. Koppenberg is, well, at least it's dry, thank goodness, for the Koppenberg. But I tell you what, this is a very, very elite group now. It's whittled down. They've got 76 kilometers to go. It's at 72.8 kilometers, the Koppenberg. So less than 5 kilometers from the finish of the Patersberg. And Fabian Cancellara and Matti Bretschel keen to keep this little group running along. Thor Hushovd has made this group. There it is. We can see it. Bretschel is the man looking over his shoulder. Bonen in the Belgian champions jersey. Lars Boom has made it into this group. Fantastic riding by the young Dutchman. Really, really good indeed. Cancellara is in there, we know. Hushovd is in this group. There he is, right in the middle of the shot. Juan Antonio Fletcher in the sky colours has already won Het Neuspad, which of course used to be Het Valk. Before that used to be Ghent. George Hincapie looking good, actually. This is the best I've seen Hincapie being in positions for a long time. He's never really, I mean, they make a big thing when they're sort of big image around George Hincapie as a man for the classics, a man for Roubaix, a man for the Tour of Flanders, but he's never pulled it off. And I always find it quite brings a smile to my face that a lot of marketing goes on. There's a certain, well, his brand of bike, BMC, have been advertising their bikes and the cobblestones of Paris-Roubaix with George Hincapie on it being the specialist, but he's never actually pulled one of these big wins off, has he?
No,
yet.
He hasn't. No, yes, and it's going to be difficult now because he's getting to the end of his career, and you know, to see him in this position, as you mentioned, now in the race, he's been there before on a number of occasions. It's all about in the final, when we get into that final 30 kilometres. Have you got it? You know, have you still got the power left to be able to match the big favourites and stay up there on the very, very final climbs of the day? You know, he certainly looked like one who could pull off a Roubaix or a Flanders. You know, he was every year he was there or thereabouts. You know, sometimes we remember in the Tour, in the Paris-Roubaix one year, he was, I think, in very good shape, and he had a mechanical problem where he broke his handlebars and crashed very heavily, so that, you know, took him out that year. And you know, the Paris-Roubaix as a one is a race where you know, need to get through the race without having any bad luck, and if you're in good shape and you're a specialist like Hincapie, well, then you can do something. But you know, a lot of riders in very good shape and just not having the luck on the day, and it's wiped out their chances of, you know, getting maybe their first victory in this style of event.
He's had a nasty couple of crashes in Paris-Roubaix. One where the handlebar stem snapped in two and just went completely. That's one of the problems with carbon, of course, it just goes. And he had a nasty fall. Pace has eased up a little bit. Just a little bit. And some riders being able to come across. There's a lot of vocalization going on from Bouygues Telecom here. And lots of talking. Who's going to do what? What should we do? What should we do? They all say. Right, we're getting to the Koppenberg. This is what Philippe Gilbert has to say about it. The Koppenberg comes after the Patersberg. It's a very hard hill. Koppenberg is a very special one. It's a hill we start climbing almost from a steady situation, but there's a 90-degree curve just before the hill. It's difficult to put the speed on because of the cobblestones. You arrive at maybe 22 kilometers an hour at the start of the hill. It's very steep, 16-17% to start with. And then it's very delicate as you go across it. Even if it's wet, you have to be up the front, make sure that you get on the good ground, otherwise you have to restart. I think it's a bit easier to actually get onto than perhaps some of the others, but certainly not a nice one to finish on. 22% to finish on the top.
Yes, and Gilbert saying they're 22 kilometres an hour. I don't agree with that. I think it's about 42 kilometres an hour.
I think so.
If you arrive in a bigger group, it's always very, very fast. It's just a sprint, the final 2 kilometres into it. When you're in a smaller group, yes, maybe they take it that little bit easier, as we have a situation here with about 10 riders out in front. But that's going to grow now because there's a group just about to make contact with our leaders. It is a one again which is all about staying as close to the front and getting a good run into it is very important. As you said, I think the Koppenberg is not as difficult as the Patersberg, because the Patersberg is a very, very tight corner and you have to slow a lot, so you lose a lot of your momentum.
Yeah, if you can get the momentum, it's a little bit easier. This is our front 4 men with just 43 seconds in hand now. Garcia, Costa, Ignatiev, Gosinen, and the rider from Vacansoleil. And this final group is Just van Leyden.
And I think they're going with fear at the moment of not making it to the Koppenberg, because if you get caught before by the group, well, then it's a difficult situation. If you've been out there for a long time, some of the riders I think are starting to really tire here in this breakaway, or what's left of the breakaway. But if you get onto the Koppenberg with 15 seconds or 20 seconds in advantage, you have a chance of getting to the top, and that's it's very important that you get over this one, because after that the other climbs maybe not as difficult and you could stay in for a long time.
Here we go then. This is the bottom of the Koppenberg. This is absolutely legendary. This is the point last year where Fabian Cancellara snapped a chain. Game over for Cancellara. There was no way up. The cars are not allowed up here. It's too steep. The problem is that if it gets a little bit wet, and most cars now front-wheel drive, they just simply can't get up the cobbles at the top. That caused absolute havoc at the race. They've got bigger cobblestone sets on either side. They resurfaced this about 3 or 4 years ago. You can see the winter we've had, though, is beginning to break things up again here. They're not easy cobbles to go up, not like the Patersberg. The Patersberg is a much, much less rough surface. This is a nasty surface. You just got to dig in and go for this one. 22% at the top. And any slight bit of damp on this and you start to spin the wheels. That's a great shot. Oh, you're going to have to watch it, though. And watch for when the rest of the peloton arrive. As Gusinen has the legs at the moment. Garcia Costa with the big thighs there going for it now. Here come the rest of the peloton. Are they going to take it easy, or is somebody going to really push the pace? Last year we saw Tom Boonen trying to pull on, push on, push on, push on. And there he is again. In the Belgian Champions jersey, Bretschel looking across at him. I'm wondering if the other BMC rider back there is Balan, but I can't see the World Championship stripes on the sleeves yet. Just mopping up the rest of the riders at the moment. Oh, Bretschel's giving it the big licks at the front. Oh, there's a problem already. Now you're going to have to get out of the way. As over goes Fletcher, Hincapé. There's Gilbert we've just seen. I think that was Thomas going over the top for Sky. Gusinen's just about to get caught, as are the rest of them. There goes Hushovs. He's slipping down a little bit, is he? Is that Stannard maybe? It's difficult to tell from the Sky jersey who it is. Just flashing underneath there. That's how they get up. They run. No problems yet. Lloyd going through the middle of that. He's good. He's well up there, Daniel Lloyd. About 30th back at the moment. Oh, Bretschel is strong, really strong, and Bonen's gone with him. He knows he's the strong man on the day. They put a big gap in between themselves and the rest of the favourites. Too far out to really, really keep going for him. Now still 70 kilometres, but it shows, Sean, who is strong and who isn't.
Yes, well, it's the strong man, and Bretschel is the one who is the inform at the moment. Maybe not one of the big favourites, but I think he is showing in the last week certainly in top shape. Bonen, of course, also very much up there, but too early. And I think they're just going to wait and see what comes up from behind, what sort of a group joins them, and certainly far too far out from the finish. 70 kilometres to go with a two-man group, and Bonen is not going to get involved in that, I think, with Bretschel.
I don't think so. He's just shadowing things at the moment. But he does like to play a bit of a psychological game here. Oh, problems. for one of the Garmin transition riders, and once you get stopped on this thing, it's almost impossible to start again. Martin Rehmer having to run up, the German champion. He's only 21 years of age. Oh, bounce, bounce, crunch, bounce for more riders from Rabobank. More problems at the front.
Nuyens, I think, in trouble there.
Is it Nuyens?
Yes, it looks very like him. And it's surprising to see him back there, because he's a rider who, you know, normally knows the terrain very well, very experienced in the classics, and he's a long way off at the moment.
I thought it might have been Rick Flint's, but I'm not sure. Look at this. Thank goodness it isn't raining. Oh, all sorts of problems. If one person stops in front of you, whoop. Oh dear. Toppling over. There was Tiziano Dall'Antonio. And then that's it. Half the peloton have to get off and rush. The really famous
Miller.
That's Miller, stuck in the middle, yep. And was that Balan there? No, probably USR. Oh, struggling. No major mechanical problems. The really famous one here, of course, was Jesper Skibby, who took a flyer before this hill, had to go up it, toppled over sideways, had a problem, toppled over sideways, and then the commissaire's car ran over the top of his bike. And I think you were not far behind on that day.
That's true, yes. Skippy was out in front, of course, and this commissar's car was between himself and the main pack, and Skippy, he just you know, fell over, lost balance, and you know, difficult situation for the driver of the commissar. What do you do if you stop on the climb? I think all his windows would have been broken by riders coming up in the bunch, so he decided to go, and it was just that little bit tight, and he caught the rear wheel of Skippy and had to just drive over it. And I think, you know, they were the choice there to stop or to go on. I would have certainly continued on, or tried to continue on, because with a charging bunch coming up, it would have caused havoc.
Another 5 kilometers and we get to Steenbik-Dries. That's the next hill in question. Then Teinberg, Eichenberg, Molenberg, Leiberg, Berendries, Ten Bosch, the Muur, and then the Bosberg. These are still our 4 remaining men. It looks like Mr. Armstrong not particularly giving it big licks then, is Lance. Bit of practice, day out in the countryside for Lance Armstrong. Well, he has a different agenda, but I think it's a bit of a shame, really, that he's not giving it a go. Maybe he's just not feeling on good form, or maybe he's got a problem.
Yeah, surprising to see him that far behind, because
well
we had seen him earlier there, very much in the to the front of the bunch, and seemed to be comfortable enough. So you know, it looks very much like that he had a problem, because I think, you know, Lance, again, he's a rider that can do very well in the classics, and to stay up there in the top 20 or 30 to get through this this period of the race, I think you know, he's very capable of doing that.
Through the feed station then as goes in and gets his musette. Away he goes a bit onto the side of the road. Always a problem. It was one of the big problems with these cobblestone sets, these pavés, that you can bounce around and bottles can sometimes fly out. I think it was it Flanders where André Schmil had a dreadful accident and broke his leg? And was it Roubaix? I can't remember, but it's a similar situation. Sometimes the bidon can bounce out, and then you hit it or hit the water that's on the cobbles, and away you go. Incidentally, talking to André Schmil, he's the oldest man to have ever won this race, 37 years of age, or more than 37 years of age. So it's almost over for our remaining 3 men out in front. Inside the last 70 kilometers of the Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, we had 8 men in a breakaway, and they've all been mopped up, bar those 3 that you just see going through the feed station. And there's a pretty elite group now towards the front. All the big favourites made it over the Koppenberg without any problems at all. Lance Armstrong, well off the back, doesn't seem to be bothering too much today. But Matti Bretschel and Tom Bonen looking to be the 2 very strong men, but they missed out last time. Showing your hand this early You never know. He may just be a little bit too much, but everybody looking, all the big favourites looking in good shape. No Pipo Pozzato this year. He's out with a stomach bug. And you never know, he might be ready for Paris-Roubaix next week, but it's looking ominous for somebody like Bonin, for example, who's in good form to do the double again. We'll just have to see how it goes. Somebody on Cow Passage, it's an interesting name, screen name, on Twitter saying, has anybody ever won Flanders after walking up the Koppenberg? I don't know. I should imagine they must have done. I can't see that in the history of the Tour of Flanders that they didn't have to walk up and then go on to win.
Guaranteed. That's riders walked up and still came back.
Van der Arden?
Yes, and you know, it's so often the case in the past. If you get the weather conditions not favourable, well then, yeah, maybe 5 or 6 riders make it, and you know, a big amount of the favourites then has just to walk up. And if you get off your bike and just run, you know, and get kick back into it again, you don't lose that much. It depends on what position you're in. If you're further back in the bunch and the whole road gets blocked up, well then you lose a lot of time. So you know, I would be pretty confident that there's somebody have won a Tour of Flanders and having to walk up the Koppenberg.
Ignatieff, Goossenen and Van Leeuwen. We could be wrong, by the way. We've had about several people writing in saying that wasn't Lance on the Koppenberg. It looked like it to me, but apparently it wasn't him, so we'll just have to double check on that. We do get it wrong. Thanks for the corrections whenever you send them in. And this is the group. There he is at the back there, 161 in this group. I'm not sure which group this is, but it's not the lead group. So there he is, number 161 at the back. Can't see either the Swiss champions jersey or the Danish champions jersey up to the front, so I assume this must be Group 2 on the road. Sky is driving along at the moment. On to the next hill. This is Steenbeck-Dries. Just 0.7 of a kilometre in length, not particularly hard. You can see that the cobbles here, cobble sets are pretty good. And Sky wanting to control this one at the front. Fletcher clearly in really good form. And they've managed to get 3 or 4 riders back up to the front again, Sean. There was a time that they sort of lost contact a little bit when Saxo Bank took control over Koppenberg and pushed and pushed and pushed. So Sky, good riding. They managed to get 2 or 3 riders up to the front again.
Yes, it's good to have a number of riders here, because if you look at the leading group here and the big favourites, there's you know, some of the teams who haven't got maybe many here, and I think you know, Quick Step and Tom Bonin might be the one who is suffering here. Not many Quick Step riders looking to be there on the front, as we can see the Sky just, you know, quite a few riders. But you know, it's sometimes when you have a lot of riders here to take it up at the moment when you don't really need to have to do that, you can make that mistake, and you know, you can sometimes you can you know, burn your men out that bit too earlier. So it's important just, you know, to calculate well and not get carried away when you have 5 or 6 riders in this leading group of whatever it is, about 30 riders, with I think most of the big favourites in here.
Just winding their way through over. This is a long section. This is a nasty bit, actually. If it gets wet here over that little level crossing, it can be nasty. I've seen people come out a right cropper there, and you can go hell for leather down this section until you get to the tarmac again. It really is quite a fast section of cobble. 30 seconds to our 3 leading men. 66 kilometers to go. They're well strung out. Here's the favourites at the front. Cancellara, Bonin, Bretschel, Fletcher is there. I'm not sure who the Garmin rider is. Mascant, maybe? Omega Farmer have a man up here as well. And Vacon Soleil also with a man right up at the front. Could be Hugeland. Could be Vestra or Leukemans. just easing up a little bit now at the front. Sky have got control. Everybody else is happy to just let them continue. 2 from Liquid Gas in here as well. Kinziato, maybe one of them. Well, that didn't look like his style. Difficult to tell from overhead who is right up at the front. Lots of riders getting back into contact, moving forwards. So we've got about, what, 40 riders here. And still hanging out there with 29 seconds. Kusanen having a good run. He seems to be dragging them along when they get to the hills. Teyenberg. Great crowds once again. They're always at the side of the road. They'll be dashing from one hill to another. But I remember doing some filming for Eurosport here once. And trying to find a decent, I had to go from hill to hill, trying to get from a decent place to another to try and get some shots. And then you say to some guy, well, you just get, you've got to press bib on, you get up the side of the climb and you get into a decent spot to take the shots. And some guy came out and said, hey, we've been here since 6 o'clock in the morning, jog on. Fair enough. You got me over a barrel there. Breschel on the far right hand side, Fletcher right next to him, then Cancellara. Gilbert is up here, Lars Bohm is in here on the right hand side as well in the Rabobank colours. Hincapie, I'm impressed to see Bohm up here. He's got so much talent, Ron. He can do anything.
Yes, and you know, it's for Bohm, it's the style of race, a bit like cyclocross, but you know, the distance is the thing where you have to be able to do that. And you know, as we go now to you know, into the final 60 kilometers, that's where you really have to be able to match the big guns. And it'll be interesting to see if he can stay on up there, as we see the Boulder here trying to make his way back up. And you know, he is the one which you know, as a favourite and as a past winner, you know, he's a bit too far off here, because making the effort here to get back to the front, I think he can pay for that later. And I don't think his shape is good enough. Although he's getting good, I think he's a little bit off to be up there in the final shake-up today.
Well, if this is the front group he's trying to get back up to, then Armstrong is definitely in this front group. We've just seen him ahead, 161. But Steindevolder, we've not seen him at all. There's Ivanov trying to get back to this group as well. We've not seen him at all until this point, bidding to become, I think, one of only 2 men to do back-to-back, to do a triple consecutive wins in the Tour of Flanders. It's not something that's been done very often. .27 kilometers to go, and it's just one of those nail-biting points, isn't it, Sean, where you just wonder what's going to happen next, who's going to launch the next attacks.
Yes, it's the time now where the some of the smaller riders and the smaller teams, you know, will be nervous, because if we get into a situation where they, you know, start looking at each other, the teams, the riders start, you know, playing about a bit, and attacks start going, that's where you have to be really careful. If you're a rider, a second-rate rider, a little bit of an outsider, to get into a move here, because they could get away, and it could be the one that's to succeed all the way to the finish. As a big favourite, you've got to just, you know, really be really concentrate. And the other big favourites, of course, you have to, you know, watch them, because you cannot allow them to get any advantage on you here. And also, you know, the groups are getting away, who's in it, what teams are in it. That's all very important. So there's so much happening from this point as we, you know, come into this final 60 kilometres.
Ignatieff, Kusanen, Van Leyen. Still looking over their shoulders, because the peloton is just a little bit behind them. And it's Sky and Saxo Bank have been animating it so far. Boland's just been able to ride the coattails of others, really. And now push coming on from Omega Pharma. It's Leif Hostap trying to animate things a little bit. Matthew Heyman doing the shadowing for Sky. Even that little injection of pace has strung it out a little bit now. 62 kilometers to go. The next hill they'll get to is the Eichenberg. This is just such a fabulous race. It really is. And a very select group getting together now. If Stein de Volder can get up here and do something like he did last year, I don't think he's got the legs this year, to be honest, but he would join Firenzo Magni as being the only other rider to have won 3 in a row. I think it was the early 50s Magni won. Arvesen at the back in the Norwegian champions jersey in this group here. Good on him. Kurt Asle Arvesen, who joined from Saxo Bank, joined the Sky team, and they have great experience from a man like Kurt Asle Arvesen, but will be fighting in this particular one because he broke his collarbone in Qatar. Thomas Fuchler, so close to colliding with the camera. Look out for 161 as being Lance Armstrong. My guess is he's probably got something Livestrong on as well, which is the thing. And Fuchler trying to load up on a couple of gels, I would think. Good for him to be there. He's having a good early season, Thomas Fuchler.
Yes, I think he's had a good start to the season, and the Paris-Nice race he was you know, very much in good shape, and seemed to be up there with the big favourites, climbing very well. Unfortunately, on the penultimate day, I think it was, he lost a bit of ground through a mechanical problem. Otherwise he would have finished up there in the top 10 of the general classement, so he's going well. But this sort of race, I don't think it is his cup of tea, but he can, you know, get out there and defend, and he's a rider. If he finds himself in a leading group and it starts to attack, he's the one who, you know, would start going in the attack, or certainly be with the attacks going away. So, you know, he's not a rider that should hang around in the bunch and just follow the situation, although at the moment, as you see, he's just trying to load up on some gels, and we could see him a little bit further on maybe having a go and trying to form a group way out front.
Gosh, wouldn't that be a turn up for the books? Thomas Fuchler wins Tour of Flanders. That really would be a turn up for the books. but at Isel, I've seen up towards the front here, Sean, he's been having a very good early season as well.
Yes, and you know, I think the good point there is in the Ghent-Wevelgem game, winning that, you know, that tells us that the form is good. But again, you know, there's no guarantee. The riders that have won Ghent-Wevelgem in the past, you know, they have problems in the other bigger classics. It's just that little step up in the difficulty and also in distance. And we have seen a lot of the winners of the Wevelgem, but it's good for Isel. He is in a team today, and we're just reading there. Mark Cavendish was saying if he can give Isel a hand out, because it's always the other way around. They're always working for him, so he would like to be able to do something for Isel. If the occasion, you know, presents himself, he will certainly do it and try and get Isel as far as possible, stay with him as far as possible, and give him as much help as possible.
Got to say that I haven't seen much of Mark. I'm afraid it's not maybe not his cup of tea, this one. Here we are on the Eichenberg, another fairly long one, 1.3 kilometers of length. Again, not such a rough section of cobbles, but such narrow roads on the Tour of Flanders. And Matthew Heyman from Sky doing a tremendous amount of work on the front. Super job he's done so far. And finally, our 3 men are going to be caught by the top of this one. Heyman still working. Bretschel, hands just nicely relaxed on the top of the bars on the right-hand side of your shot. Leif Hoste is looking in good shape. He's always, or has been, always the bridesmaid, never the bride here. Pipped by all sorts of riders. Not seen anything of Balan yet either. Already won once, the former world champion. In fact, he came to prominence in this race about 4 or 5 years ago, finishing in the top 3, I think. And everybody went, well, who's this guy? Balan, a very classy rider, but we haven't seen anything of him so far in this year's Tour of Flanders. But it's still early days. It's 60 kilometers still to go, and all there's a couple of teams trying to control things at the front, and Sky doing a good job. Saxo Bank have been doing a very good job, and Bretschel, Cancellara, Fletcher, Bonen, all looking threatening. There's still time, isn't there, Sean? If you're in this lead group but not really showing yourself at the front, are you conserving a bit more energy? Is there still time for you to make your way to the front? Surely there is.
Yes, a sure time to move here, and if you're a rider who can, win this race, or who have done a performance in the past or have won in the past, and at the moment, just stay, stay in this leading group, stay in a position where you're not going to get caught and get left behind in a split. That is so important. But also, not to show yourself on the front here, and certainly not to ride on the front and do any of the pulling. That is the way to do it, and wait for the moment, because we see the Sky team, they're really pulling along at the moment. So there's nothing you can do. There's no point to go in the attack at this point, because the pace is much too high. We have seen from the rear, like when we see Thomas Buckler and a number of riders there, they were really sprinting, coming out of the corners to stay in the group. So you have to wait until until it slows down a bit. And if it starts to attacking, then if that tactic comes into play, well, then there's a time to move. If you're a rider who feel that they're not going to be able to be good enough to match the big favourites in the end, you've got to try and get out of this one with 40 kilometres before the finish, and try and get into a breakaway that maybe will succeed and go all the way.
In your day, Sean, when you were riding the Tour of Flanders, who was the greatest rider of the Tour of Flanders that you saw, other than yourself, of course? I mean.
Well, during my time, in my best years, there was Van der Aarden, Plankert, Steve Bauer, Phil Anderson. Kuiper was there also for a period, in the beginning of my career. So the names that you see in the results, they were always the big favourites when I was taking part, and they were always difficult ones. You come up against some of those riders who were really on a good day, and always difficult to beat them. And it's the team situation as well. If you have a team where there's maybe two of those riders in the same team, that is a big advantage, because if you go into the final with a number of riders in the one team, well, then it's very important.
Only one British rider's ever won this race, Tom Simpson. Back in 1961, managed to outfox De Philippis. De Philippis in the end. I think De Philippis actually eased up when he got to the line, and he'd already got the better of Simpson, as far as I understand it. And De Philippis eased up towards the line. Simpson went, "Oh, hey, I'll have some of that," and out-sprinted him in the end. Didn't have the same sort of kick as De Philippis, but he did win. The only British rider ever to have won the Tour of Flanders. Who knows? Maybe things will be a little bit different. It's Jürgen Roelandts who is pushing on from.
Well, he has a rear flat there, and he's just keeping it going. And it's a difficult moment here, because between two groups there's no service car actually. So he just had to keep on rolling, and stay as close to this leading group as possible until the service come.
We'll take a short break. And there's Armstrong on the far right hand side in the black and yellow helmet of Livestrong. Welcome back. Kurt Ashle Arvesen, who's managed to make his way back to that group, is now on the front setting the pace. A super strong man, super experienced and super tough. Also in this group just behind him was Marcel Seberg. It's Fabian Cancellara here behind the car. He's obviously had a problem. We're not quite sure what that problem is, but off the back of that main group now. He's got, looks like O'Grady, who he's just passing. Cancellara, there's a little bit of a panic on his face there. Look at the speed he's going though. Be careful. Commissars will be very, very watchful. He's getting a bit of a tow from the Saxo Bank car, and he can also go like the clappers as well. He passed Thomas Buckler at a rate of knots there. 56 to go. He's going to have to try and go past. In the slipstream he gets again. This is going to be a bit careful. Going to be a bit careful about this, Sean.
Yes, he has to be careful, but I think he will get a warning here. It's not like in a stage race where you get a time penalty, but he's going to make a change here.
Yep, again. Bike change, is it? Yep, bike change for Cancellara. Running along, getting his new bike straight into the saddle.
Here comes O'Grady.
O'Grady's behind him, is it? Stewie O'Grady. Oh, look at the power of this man. He goes straight past Thomas Buckler, and he's got great bike handling skills as well. Cancellara around the neutral service car, gets a little bit of a push off. He's a clever rider. Now chasing what chasing onto the back of the next group of riders. He's going to get back up there, but a little bit of a heart-stopping moment for Fabian Cancellara. Terrific bike handler and so strong. All perfectly executed though by Saxo Bank. They took him up to a point where they couldn't get him any further at speed and then changed his bike over. Incidentally, it wasn't until the 1950s you were allowed to change your bikes. Here, if I remember rightly. Back in the 1930s, you could start receiving. So, well, originally you couldn't get any help at all. But then back in the 1930s, they managed to allow you to get spare tubes and tires and so on handed up to you. Then in the 50s, you were able to swap your bike if there was a problem with the frame or fork, and that was about it, really. No such problems these days. In fact, they used to tag the bikes before the start. I think the day before the start, they used to take you had to take your bike to the officials. They'd tag them so that they'd know which bike was you were riding. And if you finished on another bike, then that was deemed to have been illegal. Unless, of course, you had a frame or fork problem in which you're allowed to swap the bikes. No such problems today in today's racing. Bretschel, right the way back here, clearly wondering where Fabian was. And trying to get him back towards the front. The hand goes up. They still need something from the car. Back on Soleil rider up towards the front is Just van Leyland here. Well, this group anyway, he's at the back of this front group. He's been caught as a breakaway rider, and now he's just trying to hang in there. And Bretschel sitting in the back. Clearly the plan is to work for Cancellara then. You'd think.
Yes, well, for the moment it looks like yes, Cancellara is the man, but again it depends on what happens in the race as we go further into the final. You know, Bretschel, if there's a lot of tactics being played, and we've seen it before where the big favourites start to look at each other and you know who is going to take up the work on the front, who's going to control the race. That is the question. And if you've got a team with likes of Bretschel, who is you know the second man in the team after Cancellara, well, it's a situation you can always put him into a move away and use that. You don't have to control it, and for Cancellara that is you know a good car to be able to play, but you've got to you've got to have the riders up with you. And when you look at the front group at the moment, it's going to be interesting to see who've got a few riders up here. Sky looks to be the ones which have quite a few, and they'll you know control the situation for the moment.
Gregory Rast on the back of this group, with Matty Bretschel just ahead of him. Good day for the Belgians so far in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the feminine race, the ladies' race. Grace Verbeek of the Lotto team, the Belgian Lotto team, takes the victory ahead of Marianne Vos and Kirsten Wild of the Cervelo test team. There's something going on here because Bretschel was out of the clip there. He needs a bike change as well, does he? Clearly a problem for... Oh, what's going on with this? Let's have a look. Bretschel waiting for another bike. They can't get it out of the rack. That's not good. Oh, slight panic going on here. They can't get the bike out of the rack. Or maybe they got the wrong one out. Oh dear, there's all sorts of problems. Bretschel saying is that's the wrong bike, surely. He's not happy, Sean. I think they've given him the wrong bike, haven't they?
Well, it looks like that is it's not the bike that was first choice, because the mechanic seemed to go
absolutely.
to the other side and could not get the bike out for some reason.
Yeah.
Yes, Bretschel doesn't look too convinced with this bike, but for the moment to get moving he needs to do that, because if you keep hanging around here you're going to lose a lot of time to get back in. And we see there Jan Ries got out of the car quite late. He was allowing all the cars to go by, which is a good thing to do, because if you block the whole road, well then there's a big gap between the back of this group and trying to get back in there. So to have the cavalcade of cars in between is so important. And you could see the experience of Ries. He actually passed Bretschel and pulled in just a bit further on, and I think that was his idea, to allow the cars to go through and not have a big gap to close down for Bretschel later on.
Interesting, isn't it? Such a smooth change for Fabian Cancellara, and he's right back up at the front of this group. Brechel's been doing so much work. Not a good change. Real problems. Geraint Thomas on the left-hand side for Sky. And I think the other rider is Stannard, and I'm not sure. It looks like Stannard. Looks like it, and he's had a great early season as well. Two strong British riders at the front for Sky now.
You can see Stannard's style. His knees are a little bit sticking out.
Not all over the place?
Yes, all over the place, I suppose, is the way to put it. Not a very nice position or nice style on the bike, but efficient at times.
Effective. Effective indeed. This is Breschel with Larsson by the look of it. Just trying to pace him back towards the front. Gustav Erik Larsson has another big strong man who's sort of had a resurgence at Saxo Bank. He could never settle at a team. Went through teams like they were water. Heyman once again pushing on. That looks like Staff Sheerlinks in second spot. But Leif Hoster looking very calm and cool and collected. Hoster, a very tall man with a very small head, I have to say, and enormous legs. He looks like a cyclist. Couldn't be anything else but a cyclist if you saw him close up. Fabian Cancellara once again wearing helmet at slightly jaunty angle. Does seem to always flop over to one side. Hincapie looking very cool, always in the right place at the moment. Thomas comes to the front, pushing the pace along now. Thomas gets into this next turning first. And now beginning to string him out. This is great riding by Geraint Thomas. Dominic Rollin from Cervelo test team with Thor Hushovd here. Is Hushovd had a problem? I would say so, because Roland's looking over his shoulder to see where he is and try and pace him back. Big, strong man. Time trial specialist is the French-Canadian Roland. But for these sort of events, absolutely perfect. Thomas has made him line out a bit here.
Yes, and it seems to be the tactic from the Sky team that to make the race really difficult. Excuse me, we could see Thomas there, really just turning up the gas. The Lotto rider there just making the pace, but Thomas wanted put it up that much again, and the tactic, they probably have a tactic out there to make it really difficult and split this group, not allow riders maybe to get back in, possibly to eliminate as much riders as possible as we go further into the race. And maybe Fletcher, that's what he needs to make the race really difficult, as difficult as possible, and that's the way he feels he can do something in the end.
Certainly does. Heyman is the man on the front again here for Sky. They're pushing them. It's a case of whether they take the bait, really, isn't it? These guys behind. It's still 51 kilometers out, but they've got 3 or 4 riders in here, Sky, or 2 or 3 riders they could possibly push on if they're feeling strong enough. It's a little bit too far out to play this tactic, I think. If they were to take it a little bit further in towards the finish, then people would have to respond if you've got 3 or 4 riders going off the front all the time. But nobody seems to be taking up the challenge at the moment.
No, there's not a lot of teams interested, and we see Heyman there, pushing it on. They're allowing him to just go on. You have to ride it with a number of riders from the team, as we see just a little bit earlier from our shots where the Sky, they had maybe 3 riders, and if you want to make the race difficult and really put the pace up, then you have to ride with a number of riders on the front. Otherwise you're going to have the situation which we see here where they will allow one rider just to go off. But it seems to be with the Omega Farm Lotto team that they just wanted to slow up things for the moment.
Yeah, it does seem to be that way. Maybe Philippe Gilbert is thinking, I need a bit of a breather here. Need to keep things under control. Well, look who it isn't pushing along on the front. It's Mr. Armstrong himself. Lance in the black and yellow helmet. We missed that completely early on where he was, but there he is. Lance Armstrong did get into that front group. He's got Tom Bonin, 1, 2, 3 back. Also Philippe Gilbert sitting in there as well. And the rider from, that looks like Frederick Willems actually, the rider from Liquigas. Well, I'm not convinced at the moment, as Heyman stomps on those pedals ahead. And more pressure coming on at the front here. And everybody's beginning to look now. It's under 50 kilometers to go, and they're beginning to see who's going to make some sort of dig here. None of the big favourites want to do so, and some of the other riders think, well, actually, we might have a chance if we can get away. There's Balan, first time we've seen him in the BMC colours. First time we've seen him up towards the front. Alessandro Balan has tried to make this race his own. A world champion in Varese, and all the big favourites in this group. Well, Heyman's not getting particularly far, but fair enough. They've sent him off to try and do his bit. And Armstrong is the one who's pulled out a little bit of a gap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riders here, still a bit too far. And they're all looking at each other, Sean, now. I mean, what would you be doing if you're in this, not in the Armstrong group, but in the main group of favourites here? What would you be thinking right now?
Well, I think there's riders and teams who have to be careful here, and I mentioned some time ago, when you get to this situation where there's a bit of attacking out of the leading group or the leading part of the peloton which is left out front, you just have to start making your calculation there. If you have a team which haven't got a big leader and they're going to maybe suffer in the end, well, this is your opportunity here to try and get into the breakaway and the attacks that are going. Certainly, if you have a rider or a number of riders up here, well, then you have to start crying them into those groups that are getting away. If you're a favourite, then it's the situation you have to watch the other favourites and make sure that there's not one of them that slip away in a group here. So there's a lot of tactics you have to remember, and the breakaway as well is a danger one, because if you take the like of Saxo Bank, if they send Messi Breschel up here, well, then Cancellara is going to play that card, and he's going to always say later on in the race, if he's getting to the very final, I've got a man up there I can't chase. So when you go in the attack and you find yourself with Bone and with Cancellara, there's always going to be maybe someone who will just try and get carried along because they have a teammate up front.
But surely they have to. I mean, everybody's still looking at each other here as Armstrong looks like he's responding once again to the little dig here. Surely they have to think that Matti Breschel is having trouble. He's off the back, or has been off the back. One of the really strong aids for Cancellara, that double whammy that could have come into effect, is neutralised at the moment, and surely they should perhaps make sort of hay while the sun shines.
Well, I think there's not much. There haven't been much opportunities to do that because the pace has been very, very high for quite a long time now, and it's just in the last number of kilometres it maybe have slowed a bit, and we can see that because the riders are starting to attack, and that tells us that the pace has dropped off a bit. When you see groups of one rider, 2 or 3 riders going off the front, that tells me that the pace have slowed a little bit. So there haven't been an opportunity, and I don't think the big teams like a Bonan's team, Quickstep for example, they, as I said, they haven't got the form of past. They are not performing as well as a block, and I think they were struggling there for quite a while. We did not see many of them to the fore as we went up the Patersberg, the Koppenberg, all of those climbs. So there's not a lot you can do in a situation like that. As a favourite for Bonan, you just have to wait and see what way the race develops, and try and get your calculation, get your tactic right as we go into the final of the race.
Matt Heyman sitting up, really waiting for the 3 to join him here, and they're all going to get back together fairly shortly. Faulkner's man has made his way up to the front of this main group here. Just shows that he's in good shape, but actually the pace has dropped off. It's more to the point.
He's had his gel.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Look at that great long line of cars. You can just see how difficult it is for a rider who's been dropped. Here is Matti Breschel, and he's got Thor Hushoff for company. And is that Bohm? Looks a lot like him on the left-hand side, Lars Bohm. It just goes to show if you get distanced here now, well, you can make use of some of the cars, but it is still quite difficult to get back up to the lead group on these small twisting roads here.
Yes, it's always difficult on this race because the small roads, and you're always turning left and right. But it's so important that you have the cars, behind the group that you're trying to make your way back into. And for Breschel, he's making use of that. We see him with the Rabobank car there, and I'm not sure if he was still calling the team car because he was looking around there. Was he signaling the car, the commissaire's car, to go by, or was he looking for his team car? I'm not quite sure on that, but he is, about to make contact at the moment, and the cars, they can help a lot, and you can save a lot of energy because you go from one car to the other to get back into the group. You stay behind the car for a time, and then you just leapfrog to the next one, and you make your way back into the tail end of the group that you're chasing.
Some more interesting riders beginning to surface in the little breakaways now. We could see Martin Vinance is the rider from Quick-Step. He's not going to be doing an awful lot of work at the front. Bernard Eisel's managed to tack into this group there. There he is for HTC Columbia. Bernard Eisel, a good classics rider in very good form, with the Ghent-Wevelgem win under his belt this year already. And they won't want to let him get anywhere further than he is now. Daniel Oss is the rider from Luca Gasly's setup. That's not going to happen for them now. 45 kilometers to go. Still, the big favourites are in control. This is the Molenberg. This is a nasty one, this one. You come on it at 90 degrees. It's often either the first or early on in this Tour of Flanders. It's a twisting, serpentine type of climb. Quite steep. Gets steeper as it goes through the first bend. And quite rough, this one as well. And Oss beginning to suffer. Look at the way that pumping on those pedals on the right-hand side is Tom Bonen. Cancellara showing a bit of strength. Whoa, my word. Straight to the front to force the pace along. Now the other big favourites will be looking at that. Oh, he's put about two bike lengths into everybody already. Cancellara going up the Molenberg, showing he's got the strength. Looks over his shoulder. Who could stay with me, he says, and it's Tom Bonen. Oh, these are two great rivals for the classics now. They've both won Paris-Roubaix. Bonen's won Flanders, and I'm afraid that Cancellara hasn't yet. That's what he wants to do. Oh, that put a big split in there. That really did. That's hurt a lot of people there, Sean.
Yes, and it's amazing, the power of Cancellara. We see just, in a very short space, he put such a distance into the group that he was originally in, and with Bonen, he'll have to make a big effort to get into the wheel. But when we see here now, they're just pulling away. It will be interesting to see with the Sky team. They have a number of riders, and this is where you need one or two teammates to really, to ride and to take you back into the position, because for Fletcher here, to come across this on his own, it's going to be a big effort, and it's a big ask, and that's why you need to be minding some of your teammates a bit earlier on. I certainly would be doing it. I would not put him on the front and get him to really push the pace along. I think I would wait for a more crucial moment, and this is it at the moment.
Even so, though, it's still a long way to launch an attack. 44 kilometers to go. This is the bit where you'd always see riders like Ludo Dirksens getting to the front, and all the favourites going, oh, thank goodness for that, because we know he's just going to ride till he can't ride anymore. People get a bit of a shelter on this bit. But it's Tom Bonen and Fabien Cancellara, the two men who've been given the top ratings by French paper L'Equipe. Fletcher is looking nervous there. Look, he's looking up the road to see where the other two are, whereas Heyman is just looking at the road. Interesting. You can see, even here, you can see, if you've got HD, you probably see their eye line. But Heyman, it looks to me, is looking up the road to see where he's going. Fletcher's looking where the other two are. Eisel and Hincapie taking the chance to get some nutrition down their face while they can. How much are they going to be eating in a race like this, Sean? How difficult is it to take food on the Tour of Flanders?
Well, it's a more difficult race to take the food, because it's a very race that's turning left and right with all the small climbs, the cobble sections. It's not like in a stage of a Tour of France or in any big stage race for that matter, where you're on much better roads, much straighter roads, but you have to keep on eating here. 260 kilometers, you have to be very careful that you get sufficient amount of food down you, and gels, all of that. But they will have experience from other events. But you know, the longer event today, you know, like last week they had, you know, 2 semi-classics, 200 kilometers, but that extra 60 kilometers, you really have to be careful there, and that's where the experience counts as well. That you know how much you have to eat and when you have to eat.
There's a lot of looking going on here. Martin Vinance is the rider chasing down Bernard Eisel here. Eisel, there's only 16 seconds between Bonin and Cancellara in these groups. Eisel is the man ahead, looking over his shoulder. Fletcher in the black and white of the Sky team. Vinance is not going to do any work. He's got a man up the road. It's the Belgian champion, Tom Bonin, repleting a new Belgian champion's Eddy Merckx bicycle, as you can see. They are now the bike providers for Quick-Step. And Valcon Soleil now on the front doing the work. Vinance and Eisel just having a few little words, looking at each other. Nice looking bike, gotta say. We'll take a short break. These two away. They've got 17 seconds of a gap. Welcome back. 13 seconds of the gap. They're beginning to close it down on Fabien Cancellara and Tom Bonin. It's been Philippe Gilbert who's started that extra work on the front. He's looking over his shoulder, see who's going to come with him and help him all the time. Is that Miller? Looks like him in this group, coming up behind from Garmin Transitions. Looks an awful lot like David Miller. We'll have to make sure it is David Miller. Oh, that's a great move. And Stein de Volder's in there as well, by the look of it. Not quite sure. It could be Barredo. I just saw a flash of the arm, and I just wondered whether it was a Belgian flash on the end of the jersey or a Spanish one. Both of them haven't. 40 kilometers still to go, though. Looking so smooth, Fabien Cancellara. He looks just as smooth when he's on the cobbles as he does when he's time trialing, Sean. He's a terrifically stylish rider.
Yes, it makes it look so easy, and on the cobble sections, as you said. You know, going at this race and looks so uncomfortable. But for that matter, Bonin as well, a very good style here, and you know, able to ride over the covers, looking comfortable. It will be interesting to see this, you know, this will it succeed. And you know, Cancellara, I think, surprising first of all to see him going in the attack, because Mathieu Breschel was just trying to make his way back into the group that Cancellara was originally in, but he wants to make the race difficult, Cancellara. That's the way he can win this one. In the sprint, as we all know, he's not, you know, great in the sprint, and with Tom Bonin, if he, you know, leaves the race become easier for Bonin, well then difficult to beat him in the sprint. And by doing it this way, you know, taking Bonin out with 40 kilometers to go and make them ride, you know, with a rider like Cancellara, difficult to match Cancellara in the final if they do succeed of holding off this group. But you know, quite a few teams and riders here prepared to pull it along, so it looks, you know, like that we could see a regroupment once again.
15 seconds is the gap at the moment between Tom Bonin. He's the Belgian national champion. He's won Paris-Roubaix. He's won Flanders. He's won them twice each. Behind Fabien Cancellara, the man who's bidding to become one of only a few men who won all three of the early season classics, one after another. Milan, San Remo, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. Kinziato with a problem, is it? Looking for the car anyway. Yes, definitely has a problem. And this is the group following. Looks like Iglinski on the left-hand side, and Martin Vinance just slowing the pace up a little bit. Look, very clever riding by the Quick-Step rider on the right-hand side. Is that Sebastian Langeveld, I think, from Rabobank? Could be wrong, but I'll have a good look at him in a minute. And this group has got 20 seconds now of a gap. It's amazing when you watch Bonin and Cancellara together. It is Stein de Volder who's got up there. I thought it was. We saw him there. That's terrific riding by de Volder. But this is difficult. He can't play the card yet because Bonin is up ahead. De Volder would dearly love to be one of only 2 men to have won 3 consecutive Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, sorry. Lorenzo Magni, the last man to do so back in the early 1950s. He looks so smooth, Fabien Cancellara. even with the jaunty helmet angle. Whereas Tom Bonin sometimes looks like he's just pumping and powering his way through these cobblestones. Such a different style. And it's the other great Belgian team, Omega Pharma, Lotto, who are having to push on now. And Leif Hoster trying to close the gap. We've already seen Gilbert doing a little bit of work. And Stijn de Volder is the man benefiting from this. Martin Vainant's right behind him. Is it going to be a power play between the two Belgian teams again? It's so important for, if you're a Belgian, especially a Flandrian, to win this race and not any other.
Yes, it's so important, and for a Belgium team and Quick Step, you know, they are the team that's. They have, I suppose, the better card with Tom Bonin because he's got a sprint. Gilbert, at the moment, I don't think his shape is as good as Bonin. He's capable of winning it when he's at his best. And at the moment, we see Quick Step. They're trying to just block the situation here, make it difficult for the chasers, just rolling to the front and slowing the pace down. And they're succeeding because it's growing out now to 27 seconds. Yeah. You know, it's a good situation for Quick Step to be in. I think it's the best situation for the moment.
Nobody really wanting to take up the full weight of things. Steve Chanel, now he's already won a stage this in the last week or so in Japan, and is in super shape, and finally, you know, got good confidence in himself. He's ridden for a number of other teams before this. I think he was with, no, who was he with before? Can't remember. But French teams. And Steve in good shape, clearly in good shape. And suddenly, out of a small group, with actually David Miller in that group, he suddenly managed to get his way out of it, and was and has really boosted his confidence with a win. There is Lance Armstrong. Third group on the road now for Armstrong. And he has with him it's Burkhardt just behind for BMC. Difficult sometimes to see actually on the overhead shots from the helicopter. The Radio Shack and BMC colours are very similar, especially in the wet. Cancellara still motoring on. Bonin's taking turns on the front, but not that many big ones. Cancellara is a consummate time trialist, and he's just going to move on as they go through Elst. 36 kilometers to go. And 23 seconds. David Miller moving the pace on a little bit. Stijn de Volder doesn't want to let Miller get away. Miller thinks, I think he's perhaps got the skills to ride away from this group and ride across to the front group. De Volder knows that's a good move. And as De Volder reacts, everybody else reacts. Well, if Miller gets a shake on, that wouldn't be such good news for Bonin and Cancellara. One of the world's top time trialists, can really get his head down when he wants to. A lot of David Miller fans very happy doing this. So he's got a good move. They've set up a little bit at the back. They're not chasing him now, and that's good for Miller.
Yes, it's a good move because we could see, you know, they were not really pulling well together, and with De Volder, you know, certainly not going to do any of the work, really just blocking the whole situation to get out of this one. It's a good move by Miller because 25 seconds at the moment. If you're allowed to grow over the 30 seconds, then it's always, you know, so much more difficult, and it's still going to be a big ask for Miller here. But if he's in good shape with his trialing ability, he could come across this gap. And it is the moment to start doing something about it because the gap is growing out all the time for our two leaders.
Absolutely, and Isel's trying to shut the gap down to the chasing pack, the second group on the road. So it is Cancellara and Bonin ahead of David Miller, who's in the in-between gap. Miller, then followed by a group of riders including Stijn de Volder and Martin Vainant, also in that group as well. Both from Quick Step and not contributing an awful lot to the pacemaking, as you would expect. Then back to this group with Isel pushing things along. Lance Armstrong is the next man on the road. The AG2R rider who's just been swept up. I'm not at all sure who it is. There's our front two men, Bonin and Cancellara. Very cruelly, somebody saying, maybe it isn't, it's Holly actually. Who'll be exceptionally pleased that David Miller's coming across, I know. Saying maybe he doesn't wear his helmet, Cancellara. This is at a jaunty angle. Maybe his head's just wonky. Cruel. Good move by Miller. Really good move. And the funny thing is, Sean, he hasn't had to put a huge amount of, a massive amount of effort in to get away from the other group, because Standevolde initially chased, then he sat up a little bit, waiting for the others to do something, and they haven't. So Miller not having to put massive effort in the moment.
No, and he just waited for the moment. There was quite a few of moves and attacks, and we see that the quick steps were, just closing things down. But went at the moment was good, but he did go very strong, because we could see the Volder. He went after him, and tried to get back into his wheel. And again, it's difficult with Miller, because he's very deceiving, such a good style. It looks like that he's not really trying and going that fast. But if you are trying to bridge that 3 or 4 bike lengths of a gap, it can be so difficult when Miller really just turns on the gas.
It's back on Soleil doing the work on the front now. They have 2 or 3 men in this group, which is good for them. Daniel Oss, you can see the back of him there for Liquigas in that group with Lance Armstrong. And now Philippe Gilbert pushing on. He's trying to drag them up this climb at Berendries. One of the tarmac climbs. Gilbert. And he's causing a few pain and suffering moments behind. Steve Chanel just hanging in there, which is great stuff for him. But Standevolde being distanced, I think he's really suffering. Head's going down for Standevolde there. And Gilbert has put in a big attack. And he's going straight up to David Miller. Miller will have to hang on to this one now. He gets out of the saddle. He knows they're coming. He can work with them, Sean.
Yes, well, this is a good move now with Gilbert and Lukemans, who was going quite well. I think last week he was second in the Travel of Belgique, and so he is also one who's in good shape. And Miller, he needs 1 or 2 to make it possible for him to get back up to Cancellara, because on his own it was going to be a big ask to do that. So with the 3, if they can get working well together, they have a good possibility of making it up to Cancellara and Bonin.
Well, Miller will be hoping that trying to force some of those guys to get back up a little bit, give them a little bit of a break, realise that they've just made a big effort to get away on Berendries to get across to Miller. Now Miller will start looking behind to see where everybody is. Philippe Gilbert knows the score. You've got to come through, do some work. Leukemans is the man sitting at the back at the moment. They're going to make this group 5, are they, in a minute? There's still 30 seconds by the look of it between these 2 and the... Now, is that group the main group 2? I would imagine it is. As Bonin hops over the inside. Cancellara takes the outside line. Looking over his shoulder is Fabien, world time trial champion. Never won a world road championship. Just had a damn good try at it, I have to say, in Mendrisio. But he's now here with probably his nearest rival in terms of power and ability for this sort of race over the last 3 or 4 years. It's Tom Bonin and Fabien Cancellara. They're being pursued by David Miller, Philippe Gilbert and Bjorn Leukemans, and here they come. Welcome back to the chasing group here. Trying to get on once again to the Gilbert. I think they have, by the look of it. Gilbert, Leukemans, and is that Iglinski straight ahead? That's Hosta.
Incapi, Hosta.
Yeah. And I think it is Iglinski from Astana. And still up the road then is David Miller, Philippe Gilbert, and Bjorn Leukemans. And just ahead of those riders are the 2 biggest favourites for this year's race, and they've gone very early. 44 kilometres is when Fabien Cancellara launched a big dig on the Leberg, pushing away. And Tom Bonen responded immediately. That huge pumping style of his compared to that smooth style of Fabian Cancellara's. And there they are. The chasing riders trying to track down Cancellara and Bonen. Well, they say Group 2. I'm still not sure what they're meaning by Group 2 here, Sean, whether they mean the bigger group or these three here. I surely can't see them going out to 53 seconds.
No, I think this is it's the bigger group at 53 seconds at the moment. Difficult to see where, you know, it could have grown out of 53 seconds for our three chasers here, but again, you just never know with these two up front, because Bonen, as we can see here, maybe he's not taking as long of pull on the front, but Cancellara certainly, you know, he's the strong one. It'll be interesting to see if it has grown to 55 seconds for our three chasers. Then it's, you know, going to be a major task for them to make it back to our two leaders.
This is going to be really, really difficult if they do this. I've got the 10 Boss is the next hill coming up, short asphalt hill, and I want to get to that before everybody else. Cancellara gets into almost time trial mode again.
It is 56 seconds for our three chasers.
It is indeed.
107 back to the third group. 108 now, back to the third group on the road. So it's growing out rapidly.
That is a remarkable piece of riding by these two. It just goes to show how good. You've got to say that Fab's been taking most of the turns on the front, but Bonen's now coming through to do an equal amount. I think they know that if they can keep this one up, it's between those two. They're going to have to work exceptionally hard behind to get back on with 54 seconds of a gap. Really difficult now. Are we going to see the Tour of Flanders contested with these two riders now, Sean?
Well, it looks very much the situation, because I think our three chasers, you know, of Leukemans, Miller, Gilbert, they would be really trying to, you know, to get across this one as quick as possible, but they're not, you know, eating into the time advantage. It's growing out, in fact, so not looking good. And again, you know, Gilbert, I think he was struggling when the attack went, when Cancellara attacked with Bonen reacting, and you know, that was the time to go. And when we did not see Gilbert, he would have the experience, but if you haven't got the legs, well, then you cannot do it. And I think on that climb he was just a little bit in the red zone, as they say in cycling terms, and just could not react. And you know, it's not a good indication for going forward. And now he's, you know, not just strong enough to be able to ride with the three chasers, for the three of us ride together to be able to eat into this advantage. It doesn't look like they're going to close it down.
It doesn't look like it. 53 seconds is the gap at the moment. On to the 10 Boss. This tarmac climb with Fabian Cancellara. He flicks the elbow to try and get Bonen to come through and do a little bit of work on the hill, but it's not going to happen. He's certainly not going to come through and do it there. He's not going to attack on this point either. 52 seconds the gap behind. Leukemans is really taking a bit of a tow, you know, he's been taking a bit of a ride. And maybe he doesn't have the legs, maybe he thinks he does, but he's just sheltering there. So it's really 2 against 2. It's Cancellara and Bonen against Gilbert and Miller at the moment, and Leukemans is not really taking much of a turn on the front. Difficult to know. He looked strong enough getting out of the group, but you never know in a race like this. You can suddenly just go away from you. Here he is. Look, he's still at the back. But he is in good shape, as Sean's been saying. He can get a podium place in Belgique. He can certainly do something here in the Tour of Flanders. 53 seconds, holding steady now, Sean.
Yes, and you know, they will be made well aware of that, our two leaders, by their directors, and you know, that's the way they will calculate their effort here. Not allow the three riders to get back to them out in front, because then it's a more difficult situation with 5 leaders. So I think for both our leaders, it's in their interest that they do not allow these 3 to get back in, and I think that was the calculation. They, you know, they really kept it going strongly, maybe upped it a little bit when they they got the information that there was 3 chasers, you know, out after them, and you know, it's still, you know, as you say, looking for 54 seconds at the moment. It's just keeping it stable. That's what they've got to do now, and just continue on at this for a while until we get closer to the finish. And it's going to be an interesting final with 2 out front. But with Lukemans, I think, you know, he has good form at the moment, putting in good performance. But again, he's getting to the distance, 230 kilometres. You know, he could be getting into difficulty. Not, you know, a rider who has experienced that a lot in the past, and being in this position, certainly not.
55 seconds then. I mean, is there a case for these 3 thinking, right, look, we're not making any inroads at the moment, shall we ease up and let the other guys come to us?
No, I think you have to just keep on battling here. And you know, when you see the advantage 117, if you can hold it at that, and they're going to start, you know, losing a little bit of interest behind the ones who are chasing, if they're not going to close down to the 3 out in front, the bigger group, let's call it the group of Fletcher and co. They're going to start losing heart as well, and that's what you've got to do, because they're riding for a place here on the podium. 3rd place is still to ride for these 3 chasers, and also a very good place for, you know, for all 3. A top 5 or a top 10 in the Tour of Flanders is such a great performance.
All that work done by Sky, all not coming off at the moment. Juan Antonio Fletcher in that 3rd group on the road now. 56 seconds back to the 2nd group, including David Miller. But Saxo Bank getting their man in exactly the right place. Fabian Cancellara is just super strong, able to stay at the front all day and ride away. Made his move on the Leiberg, and only Tom Bonen could see that that was a really, really strong move, and went with him. Well, I'm sure they could all see it, but he was the only man who could go with him. I've got to say, Cancellara is looking very cool here. Very good. And he's doing the bigger of the turns on the front, although Bonen, of course, is helping out. They know they've got to stay away. When will these 2 go hammer and tongs at it, Sean? Is it going to be as late as the Bosberg? Are these one of them going to attack on the Muur? What's it going to happen now?
I think Cancellara is going to attack on the Muur. He's going to try it on the Muur first of all, and really test Bonen, because that's you know, his chance of winning this one. If he, you know, continues riding to a very late stage in the race, then it's going to be, you know, difficult to get rid of Bonen in the sprint, of course, unless he can really, you know, give Bonen a very difficult ride all the way to the finish, and Bonen, you know, comes to the sprint very, very tired. He's going to be, you know, very, very difficult to beat in a sprint. So Cancellara will definitely try on the Muur. First of all, he will really just turn up the gas and see can he put Bonen in difficulty, and if he doesn't do it there, he will try it on the following one again.
So we're going to come down to the last 2 hills then. They've been over the 10 boss. It's the Muur, coming with only 15.8 kilometers to go. They're just sort of recouping now while they can. 50 seconds is enough of a gap. And then it's the Bosberg with just under 12 kilometers to go. Long hill, the Bosberg. Well, long enough at that stage of the race. Not the longest in the race, of course. It's a mixture of cobbles and asphalt. At the bottom it's asphalt, it's cobbles at the top, 980 meters. The Muur, half that distance, 475 meters. Very steep though, nearly 10%. All cobbles. This looks like a good gap now. 52 seconds only from these 2 back to the chasing trio, Philippe Gilbert, David Miller and Björn Leukemans, but that's more than enough at the moment. And the weather, well, it's been wonderful all day since the very, very start. Back to our 2 leaders here in the Tour of Flanders. 50 seconds is the gap between Fabian Cancellara, Tom Bonen, and these 3 here, Philippe Gilbert, David Miller and Björn Leukemans. Well, Cancellara and Bonen have been building up to this week, this whole week now, with Tour of Flanders this weekend, and then live on Eurosport we'll be showing, of course, Paris-Roubaix next week. Ooh, nasty weather. Is it going to blow over? This is the chasing group at 122 back now. It's all holding steady gaps. Hugeland in this group. He's got teammate Björn Leukemans up ahead. Must be terribly disappointing for them not to get a Tour of France start, Sean, while we're just here looking at the Vacances Soleil boys.
Yes, I think you know, they did what they need to do. You know, taking on French riders, they put a huge effort into it, but unfortunately they were up against, you know, the teams. When you look at the teams who were selected, well then it's, you know, difficult to you know, it's difficult to say, well, they should have been in instead of any of those teams that are in there. I think, you know, the two that missed out, Skill Shimano and Vacances Soleil, they were the ones who were always going to be doubtful for me.
Yeah. And to be fair, they've taken it very much on the chin, haven't they? They've said, well, you know, we tried what we can try, but there's so many good teams around. And we have to go with the best lineup. Just one of those things. Must be a terrible disappointment, though. Well, congratulations, I've got to say, to our host broadcasters. Belgian television have done the most fabulous job once again on the Tour of Flanders. They really know how to produce pictures for a race. And we benefiting here on Eurosport. And the weather's been good too. 51 seconds. It's still holding on there with 19 kilometers to go. The top 10 place, as Sean has said, in the Tour of Flanders really means something. They would very much like it to come down below 50 seconds though, and start catching them. They're not going to, though, I don't think. It's going to come down to a two-horse race, I think. .129 back to the main gap, and they're coming up now towards the Mur. And let's see what Philippe Gilbert, one of those chasing riders, has to say about it.
Philippe
Gilbert saying before you get to the Mur de Grammont, for the 5 kilometers beforehand, which is where they are now, by the way, you'll know if you've got the legs to do a performance and to be in the right place on the hill. It's really hill because it climbs harder and harder all the way up to the top. There's a massive crowd, a huge atmosphere, and you always have something, you always feel something unique when you go to the top, and you've got massive motivation by the time you get there. Last year I had a chance to get second or third position, and it was a wonderful moment, and it gives you a tremendous amount of motivation when you're up towards the front because of all the atmosphere that you get through. It certainly does. Even if you're riding the Sportive ride, which is the day before, which is yesterday, tens of thousands of riders do it. We haven't mentioned it at all this time because the action's been so good, that when you go up there you really do get the feeling of the whole place being something special. Just shaking the legs out a little bit. Here's Tom Bonen. Cancellara had done a fair amount of it so far. In the following group, Leif Hoster and Langeveld, De Volder, Hugeland's in there as well. But these two, 44 seconds. The gap is coming down a little bit, Sean. I think it's still too much for the others to make up. And Bonen is now looking a little bit more recovered, and in fact, if anything, Cancellara is looking a little bit more as if he's put that extra effort in.
Yes, it's interesting to see now as we come to this very important climb, the Capelle, the Mur as we call it. Maybe you know, they're just thinking of that, and both of them are, you know, trying to just conserve a little bit of energy. Cancellara, it's possible that he's just, you know, knocking it off a bit, not riding as strong on the front, and if he's going to try an attack here, that's what he's got to do. And you know, 44 seconds on advantage, it's still, you know, it's quite sufficient, because if you go on the attack here, well, then you're going to pull out a number of seconds again, and I think the three behind maybe are starting to pay the price, and we will see the real picture, I think, after this one, how well the two leaders out in front here will climb this very important part of the race, and the three chasers, how well they can do it. So I think we'll get a very clear picture as we get over the top of this one.
Here they go then. This is the just the brick paving now. Now they turn onto the climb proper. Through these massive crowds, they'll swing around to the right here. It gets steeper and steeper and steeper up towards the top. Left-hand turn again, and then climbing out of the sort of urban conurbation here. Cancellara setting the pace on the front at the moment. It doesn't look like there's going to be a big stinging attack at this moment. You never know, though. These two riders just will know each other so well.
And of course this section here is not the most difficult up through the town. It's a bit further on when you turn up, and it gets quite a bit narrower the road. That is the real section, and you know, Bowen is going to sit in the wheel here. He's not going to do anything trying to take the front. His, I think, tactic will be just to try and stay in the wheel of Cancellara to get over this one.
There used to be prizes for the climbs themselves. Used to get preems going over the top of these many years ago, which you got huge action by riders. They don't have that sort of thing anymore, where you're out for money prizes for each climb. Cancellara still setting the pace in the front. Bonin quite happy to follow here. 44 seconds back to our chasing group of riders. They'll be on the lower slopes now. Here they swing right. It's going to get very steep very quickly onto the rougher cobbles, away from the block paving. Now Bonin moves to the right hand side. Cancellara quite happy to let him go there. It gets harder and harder and harder as they go up. The crowd's absolutely manic for this race. They love it here in Flanders. They're still just pacing each other at the moment. Oh, David Miller beginning to suffer on this very steep climb now. Further back, it's Leukemans and Gilbert, who are just pulling away a little bit now from Miller. Standing on the pedals is Tom Bonin, both of them back inside. It's almost incredible to think that riders like yourself, Sean, and these guys, they just sit in the saddle up here. I mean, most people are suffering. If you ever ride this as a leisure rider, you just suffer a million deaths going up here.
Yes, and you know, the best way to climb is in the saddle. I think you get more power in. When you start getting out of the saddle, it's difficult to get traction, especially on this section, which is really steep. And as we see Cancellara just, you know, turning up the gas here and really trying to put Bowen under pressure.
Oh, and he is as well. That's fabulous. Oh, he just sits in the saddle and turns the pedal. Oh, what class. And Bonen's struggling. Bonen's struggling to hang on. That is super class. Oh, that is fantastic. Oh, that is brilliant riding by Fabian Cancellara. He just sat there and turned on the pace, and Bonin, no response at all. He's really suffering. He's having to fight the bike up the hills. Tom Bonin being cheered on by a huge crowd of Flandrians. He is their man, but Cancellara has just ridden away at the moment. How far has he made that gap? Well, it's big enough that the cameras can't see it. Where is Fabian Cancellara? Remember, he's got the skills for descending as well. Oh, look at that. That's a massive gap. He's pulled out, what, 300 meters? 250 meters. That is brilliant, and he's just seen he's got it. He's got a ride to the, he's got a time trial to the end now. He's still got the Bosberg to go. That's it. That is a brilliant move. And Tom Bonin, who looked so comfortable at that time, just blown away, Sean.
Yes, and it's Cancellara just, you know, so impressive, and you know, just turns it up, turns the gas up a little bit. Looked like he wasn't making that effort, but you know, when you're trying to stay in the wheel, and Bowen, we could see him just doing everything in and out of the saddle, trying to limit his losses there, but just no way he was going to be able to stay in the wheel of Cancellara. And you know, it's lovely to see, but you know, it's when you're like Bowen and you come to a climb like this, you're just starting to tire a little bit. Cancellara, it's so dangerous, and you know, that was his tactic. He take Bowen out from a long ways before this climb and trying to work him over a bit, and that's exactly what he's done.
He certainly has. Working him over a bit is a mild understatement, and now he's got it. Now he's got the bit between his teeth. Tom Bonin knows he's got the world's best time trialist ahead of him, and that he can, that world's best time trialist can go into time trial mode. There's nothing Bonin can do now except get his head down and try and go for it. Oh, there's a familiar pose, isn't it? Hands on the middle of the bars. He might as well have been in a time trial bike. Well, with the exception perhaps of Alberto Contador, is Fabian Cancellara, well, different type of rider, but is Fabian Cancellara the most impressive bike rider in the world? Who knows? He could argue a very good case that he is. And that must be terribly demoralizing, Sean, if you're in a position like Tom Bonin, where you know you're in good form, but there's just no answer to this.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Although it's a great performance by Bonin able to match Cancellara when he did go into the attack on the Molenberg. He was the only one who could react and stay getting the wheel of Cancellara. And as we see here again, the effort by Cancellara, it just it looks like that he's just taking a pull on the front here, but there's such an acceleration there, but just do not show it because of his style and the power, of course, that he has got. And we can see Bonin here out of the saddle, really sprinting. And once you lose Cancellara at this point in the race, well, then it's very demoralising for Bonin. If it was a reverse situation where Bonin went on ahead here on this climb, well, Cancellara would have some chance with his time trial ability. But for Bonin, against a Cancellara who is one of the world's best time trialists, and also when you're a little bit suffering on the climb and he rides away from he's got that little bit of extra energy left, it's going to be impossible for Bonin. And he realised that immediately when he started to lose 2-3 bike lengths. I think from there on you just have to limit your losses, get over the climb as quickly as possible, and just go to the finish as fast and as quickly as possible and try and hold the chasers off. Now I think that is the objective for Bonin, to try and get the second position out of this one.
What do you do? I mean, how quickly do you have to alter your game plan, Sean? How does your mind work when you think, that's it, I can't stay with him? And then the panic situation, of course, you could start chasing the game, and then you run the risk of losing your second place as well.
Yes, well, on the climb, we could see Bonin there. He was just giving it everything and try and get over the climb as quickly as possible. But then you have to get into a rhythm, and certainly not go into the red immediately after the climb. Bonin, I think he could see, and he realised immediately there was never any way back to Cancellara. So you have to think about the riders that are chasing from behind, and just calculate your effort from here on to the finish. And I think that's what Bonin is doing at the moment, as we see 36 seconds or 38 seconds, sorry, for Bonin, and 109 for our chasers. So Bonin still has a nice advantage, and he should be able to hold that off to the finish if he doesn't really tire on this the final climb of the day.
Bosberg, yeah. Here we are. He looks as though he's plugging on, but I think it's taken a little bit out of him going over the Muur. Now where is Tom Bonin? Here he is. He's never going to get back. Head's going down between the shoulder blades. He's pushing on as hard as he can, but he's still not got it in him. Just shows how incredibly difficult it is, this race. Cancellara digging in now. He's got 12 kilometers to go. If he wins this race today, he'll be one of only a few men who've managed to win the opening 3 classics of the season. Not all in one year necessarily, but to add them to their palmares. The others being Schmil, Kuiper, Ras, De Vlaming, that's Roger De Vlaming as opposed to Eric, Merckx, Van Looy, Derek, De Bruyne and Bobé, and Van Steenbergen as well. In fact, Van Steenbergen was the youngest ever winner of this race, 19 years old. Last man to do the triple was André Schmil in 2000, when he was the oldest winner ever of this race at 37, well over 37. And Bonin still powering up the Bosberg, but Fab is over the top. The Fabian Cancellara fan club on the left-hand side at the bottom of the Bosberg. Just a little nod by Cancellara. He's even got the grace to give him a little nod as he goes past. World champion, former world champion Tom Bonin, and Bjorn Leukemans and Philippe Gilbert still chasing on. David Miller just been tailed off. I think a little bit too far, too hard for David Miller.
And of course Miller finishing the 3 days of Pana. You must remember all of those riders really just prepared for the one today, and Cancellara, Bonin not riding the 3 days of the Pana. They prefer to go away and just prepare quietly for this one. So when you finish the Pana and do the final time trial, you're going to pay the price a little bit as well, and I think Miller is having that feeling and getting that at the moment.
Cancellara, of course, will be one, well, he'll join the other 10 men who've won all 3 opening classics in their career. Bonin wanted to win this one because he wanted to make it triple wins in both the Ronde van Vlaanderen and the Paris-Roubaix race. He has the chance to gain revenge next weekend on Fabian Cancellara in Paris-Roubaix. We'll be covering it live here on Eurosport. Sean and I trackside in the Roubaix Velodrome, waiting to see which mud-besplattered man will come round to become victor of that hell of the north. The weather's kept off here today. It was raining at the start in Bruges, but it cleared up for the rest of the day. Just the odd, very light shower. We had a lot of nervous crashes about halfway through the race as people started to jostle for position, but in the end it came down to select groups. Typical Tour of Flanders, where the big favourites, the big strong men, whittle it down, whittle it down, whittle it down. In the end it came to these two men, Tom Boonen and Fabian Cancellara, with 10 kilometres to go. On the Mur, this man here rode away from his main rival, Tom Boonen, with such grace and such style. I mean, just brilliant riding. And he'd done the same on the Molenberg to shed everybody else, and only have Boonen with him. By far the strongest man on the day. Terrific riding. Cancellara all by himself now with 10 kilometres to go, time trialling his way to victory here in the Tour of Flanders in the Swiss national champions jersey. Interestingly, the first non-Belgian, I think, if I'm right in saying so, to win the Tour of Flanders was Suter, a Swiss rider. And Cancellara in just fabulous, magnificent form. Where is Boonen? Can we see him physically? Oh, he's just got such a huge gap. It has been the pattern over the last few years, though, Sean, that riders just ride away from people towards the end.
Yes, well, it's such a difficult final, and you know, with the Muur and then the Borsberg, it's you know, a big task. And when you consider all the climbs, you know, in the race, 15 in total, you know, it's a race that, you know, only the fittest and only the strongest survive. And we've, you know, seen so many times that a rider who is in good shape and has that just a little fraction of percentage better than the others, fitness level, strength wise, in the end, he can just go on and ride away on his own. And you know, that's a familiar sight in the Tour of Flanders. And Cancellara, of course, when he gets into top shape and he's just, you know, touched it at the right moment. He's coming in the last 10 days really good, and last week, you know, in the E3 prize, he was so impressive. And when he attacked in the end, he was with Boonen and Fletcher, and he just rode away from him in the final, inside the final kilometre. It's an unbelievable, you know, power that he could do it on the flat. And when he, you know, when you can do it there, well then, if you have that little bit on the climb, you can, you know, you can certainly do it. And Cancellara has, you know, he's just got his top peaked at the right moment, and we've seen it today, the way he's ridden up the Muur. And you know, we must remember that Boonen is in his very close to his top, if not at his top, and but Cancellara just that little bit of a stronger and a powerhouse, really. Absolutely.
You have to wonder what difference a week will make, though. But maybe Boonen will just take that extra week to get on to super top form for Paris-Roubaix, or maybe this man can carry it on. What is the window of opportunity that you have when you get onto top peak form?
Well, I think you know, there's possible 3 weeks there, and Cancellara, as I said, he's only come into it in the last 10-15 days. Maybe last weekend was, you know, just coming to his really top shape, and certainly today he's at that, and he can certainly go on into the Paris-Roubaix and you know, still hold on to it. It was a bit more difficult in Paris-Roubaix with a Boonen. If he is in good shape, it's a bit difficult to get rid of riders in a Roubaix, where on a climb, if a rider is suffering that little bit and you have that little bit extra, well then you can really cause them problems.
Big losers today. Philippe Gilbert once again not making it across to these two. Just didn't have he doesn't have the out-and-out power of riders like Tom Boonen and Fabian Cancellara to get there. Stein de Volder, the defending champion, not on top form. We did wonder, I think everybody's wondered in Belgium especially, whether he is on top form, but Stein de Volder not getting into that chasing group, but not being in super top shape. Maybe outsiders like Kinziato, who could do well next week in Roubaix, not being able to get into top form here. Just so smooth, Cancellara. I can't believe he's got such fantastic form even after 260 kilometres. He just looks fantastic. I wonder if he'll lend me his legs for tandem riding. It would be quite handy. I'm sure my tandem pilot would just quite happily put his feet up over the bars, and if that were the case. Boonen, big strong rider. himself. Now, does it go through your mind at this point, Sean, saying, look, okay, I'm going to push hardest as I can now, but I don't want to take everything out of me. I've got Roubaix next week.
No, I don't think you'd be concerned about Roubaix. There's sufficient time to recover. You've got the full week. He's just going to, just calculate your effort here, and don't go into the red, certainly, because you have to remember the chasers behind, as we see the 45 seconds back to the chasers behind Bonin. So you just work on that basis, getting the time check from the team car, and he's realised a long time back that there was never any chance to get back to Cancellara to catch up with him. So it's all about riding now to secure your second place on the podium here, and that's a magnificent performance when you're up against a rider in Cancellara's form. But looking at Gilbert, I think he's put in a very good performance, because he hasn't been in good shape. We see it in Paris-Nice. He was quite a bit off, but he's coming, and I think his objective, his main target this year, is the Ardennes Classic a bit later. So it's difficult to come into shape now, be in shape now, and hold for the Ardennes Classic. That's almost an impossibility.
So he's looking at 3 weeks hence, or 2 weeks hence, for Amstel Gold, and then on to Liège, Bastogne-Liège, Flèche-Wallonne, all those rides where we move to the east of Belgium. And we move into the Ardennes region, the tarmac classes, the hilly ones, especially things like Amstel. He'd be pretty good at that sort of thing. But you can see the sort of form this man has been developing over the last 2-3 weeks. 17th in Milan-San Remo for Fabian Cancellara, 16th in Dwars van Vlaanderen, and first, of course, in the E3. So it's just been ramping up very slightly and peaking at exactly the right time.
Yes, and in Dwars Vlaanderen, he just gave an exhibition there of riding on the front. With about 50 kilometers ago, he started to ride for Breschel, and it was unbelievable. The pulling he was doing on the front. He had 30 riders in his wheel, and everybody was just hanging there. And we could see at that moment that he was getting into good shape. Then Breschel goes in the attack, and everybody looks at Cancellara. So of course, then on the E3 prize, he just was that much stronger again, and we could see that the form was really coming. And for today, I think the riders know more, because they're with the guy. They're with him every year over the past couple of years, and they can feel that he was going to be very difficult to beat.
He's not just classy, he's just downright frightening. Well, Flanders' finest, Tom Bonin, still pushing hard to secure that second place. And it's a big thing for the crowds here as well to see him out here at the head of affairs, so to speak. Well, he was at the head of affairs. Fabian Cancellara just never looks as though he's even suffering, to be honest. But he's absolutely ripped for this race and for next weekend's Paris-Roubaix. The ability to suffer of this man is incredible. He has great strength, but he just is capable of suffering more than other riders. And a terrific win it's going to be for Saxo Bank. And will they carry it across into Paris-Roubaix, where they've had such a great history in recent years? Of course, this man has won Paris-Roubaix already, and he will become, as I say, one of a handful of riders to win all 3 early season classics. And the last one was André Schmiel. Of course, had Belgian citizenship then, but he's now a Moldovan again. He won Milan-San Remo in '99, and Paris-Roubaix won back as far as 1994. But the last of his wins when he was 37 odd years of age was in the Tour of Flanders in 2000. Henny Kuiper, he won all 3. Jan Ras, De Vlaminck had multiple wins in Oregon. I think he won Milan-San Remo 3 times, did he? Won Paris-Roubaix 4, Mr. Paris-Roubaix as he was known as. The most successful of them all, of course, Eddy Merckx. I think I'm right, is it 7 Milan-San Remos he won? Terrific win streak, 7 for Eddy Merckx in Milan-San Remo, 2 of the Tour of Flanders and 3 Paris-Roubaix. So by far the most successful of the winners of all 3 early season classics. Well, where can he go from here, this man? He's won the World Time Trial Championships. He's had a good stab at the World Road Championships. That must be his next objective, surely, I would have thought.
Well, I think some of the other classics, he said that the Ardennes Classic is the ones which he would like to win. And he feels that he can do that over the next couple of years. And you know, when you look at the performance in last year's World Championship on a very, very difficult circuit, when he is in top shape, he can get over the more hillier events, and for that matter, the hillier classics like the Liège-Bastogne-Liège. I think he could, you know, win that in the years to come. A Tour of Lombardy, maybe that one, the climbs are that bit longer, but he has mentioned, I've read it, that the Liège-Bastogne-Liège is a classic that he feel that he could win in a number of years.
And he's right in the middle of his best period. What, 29 now, something like that? Fabian Cancellara. He's still got years to go. Probably what, 3-4 years of his best riding. Oh, that's a lonely road, isn't it? By himself, Tom Bonen. It's always the strangest part for me, this part where you've got like less than 5 kilometers to go. You come out of the Muur with all that screaming crowd, and then by that time the race has been in recent years sorted out. Somebody's ahead and it goes silent because there's no crowds at the side of the road, and the poor guy who's chasing on to try and stay there, it's just deathly silence even when you're watching him on the screen. Rather eerie. 2 kilometers to go then for Fabian Cancellara.
And for Tom Bonen, I think, yes, he hasn't the screaming that he had on the Muur, but I think the legs are screaming at him at this point. We can see the difference when we see Cancellara with the cadence he has got here, and we go back to Tom Bonen, and he's suffering very, very difficulty continuing to keep the pedals turning.
Under the 1 kilometer to go banner then for Fabian Cancellara. He's still motoring on, but he's easing up a little bit. He knows he's got it in the bag. He's a very happy man. What's he got here? A little angel of some sort, is it? Oh, he's a very happy man. Fabian Cancellara, he attacked on the Molenberg. He shed most of the major rivals there, and then he attacked again on the Muur and just rode away. I can't really tell what that is.
Swiss gold.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Fabian Cancellara, fabulous ride. He just rode away from Tom Bonen. Bonen looking like he was all over the bike, and Cancellara just sitting on it, out of the saddle, just winds it up a little bit more. He's sort of shaking his head. He can't believe it. Well, you better believe it, son. You're the best on the day by a long, long way. Bjarne Riis congratulates him. He's got a ride to the line. Lone victor of the Tour of Flanders, Fabian Cancellara, winner in E3 just a week ago. Fabulous ride by the Swiss national champion. He's the world time trial champion. He grabs a Swiss flag going over. The first man to win the Tour of Flanders who wasn't a Belgian was Suter, a Swiss man. A great tradition. Kept on by Fabian Cancellara. He's in terrific shape, and who would bet against him for Paris-Roubaix next weekend? Victory goes to Fabian Cancellara. And he is a very happy man indeed. Terrific win, Sean. Brilliant win.
Yes, and just a magnificent performance. And when you go out there as one of the big favourites, and you know, he certainly was that. You know, he just did a magnificent job, and you know, to take up the race so early, you know, it is always, you know, a little bit you're a little bit nervous doing that. The others, if it doesn't succeed, and when we see the situation with Bonen and Cancellara out front, if that group of, you know, 20-25 riders had managed to get back in there, well then, you know, you would pay for that effort maybe, but he had to do that, and I think he calculated very well, really giving a difficult ride to Bonen, not to allow him to get a handy ride to the Muur, for example, or to the Bosberg, and you know, just the sheer power and the fitness coming out on top.
Second this year then for former winner of the Tour of Flanders, twice a former winner, Tom Bonen. Well, maybe he can get his revenge next week at Paris-Roubaix, which he's already won 3 times. But that was a hard ride for Bonen. Can't take anything away from Fabian Cancellara or that man there. Clearly in super good form, but disappointing. He knows on the day that when a rider of Cancellara's capabilities is on top form, then there are very, very few, if any, in the world who can match him. So the Swiss champion comes in first here in the Ronde van Vlaanderen under lovely, lovely spring sunshine. Well, the chasing group still have to catch these two. It's Bjorn Leukemans and Philippe Gilbert who will take the third spot. Leukemans, who took a bit of a toe, to be frank, took a bit, so starts the sprint early. Can Gilbert wind it up and come past him? He should be able to. He's the better of the sprinters. And Gilbert takes third, ahead of Bjorn Leukemans of Vacansoleil. Fourth spot for him. Gilbert matches his position of last year then. Third spot. Steinewolde, last year's winner, is in the group of behind. Heinrich Hausler, who was second last year, is not in the race. Who's going to take the sprint for fifth? Bernard Eisel is the man leading them out at the moment. There's a whole bunch of riders in here. Yeah, looks like Farah. Farah, then Hinkepi, and then I'm not sure who the Cervelo rider was. It could have been Roger, actually. Fabian Cancellara takes a memorable win, a beautiful win. That was class riding. And Tom Bonen, he will have said congratulations to Fabian Cancellara already, but you can bet your bottom dollar he's swamped by the Belgian press at the moment. And even the Flandrians have to applaud that. A lot of these will have heard it on the radio, seen it on the box. Well, they've all had news circulating. There's a big screen up at the finish. They'll have known what's gone on. They won't. They're such cycling fans. They won't hold it against Fabian Cancellara that he beat their favourite Tom Bonen. What a brilliant ride. There's the commentary boxes on the right-hand side. You can see. Well, he looks in super lean shape right now, Sean. I mean, you had him as an outside tip for the Tour de France last year, but he is a seriously class rider. Where can this man go? Surely he'll get the World Championship one day. So, Super Spartacus. Fabian Cancellara takes the win. What can you say other than chapeau? And everybody being held back. All the Dutch press are in there, all the Belgian press are in there. It's carnage at the end of the Tour of Flanders. It is a huge race, this, Sean. And for Flandrians, it's the real one.
Yes, it's well, it's one of the monuments of the classics. You know, next week we have the Paris-Roubaix, but a different style race, and you know, for the Belgians, you know, this race is for them it's the most important race. Certainly, if you ask you know, any of the Flandrians or the riders which race they would like to win, it would be, you know, definitely this one. And you know, they love cycling so much. It's such a popular sport here. You know, the amount of people out on the road there, it's you know, it's a great race, and to win it, it's, you know, it's a dream come true for all professional bike riders.
Do you think other than, well, this is the next group coming in, do you think other than Alberto Contador as a stage race rider, do you think Cancellara has a decent claim to being the best cyclist in the world at the moment?
Well, when you look at you know, his performances and time trialing, his performance in the smaller stage races, you know, he is definitely up there with Contador. I think with Contador, I think the advantage is the Tour de France is the race which, you know, the exposure we get and the following it has is probably a little bit of an advantage to Contador, but certainly Cancellara, you know, the performance he's putting in, you know, you have to hand him chapeau. It's you know, just a great ride once again today, and when he's in form, you know, he always produces results. That is the great thing about him.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see him on the stage all the way through this season. Bonen just has to console himself with a second place and regather, regroup, refocus for Paris-Roubaix next weekend, which is live here on Eurosport with Sean and I, trackside of the Roubaix Velodrome. Hopefully the weather will stay reasonably good. It may be interesting for the spectator, not so good for the riders, and certainly not much good for the commentators at Roubaix, I have to say, because we're out in the open under the stands and the wind and rain can whip across. It wasn't so bad when you had lots of bits of paper. In fact, it's the one race we have to take lots of bit of paper on, because if you try and deliver things electronically and the rain gets into them, that's it. End of story. So a fabulous ride by Swiss champion Fabian Cancellara. He makes himself one of a number of men who've won all 3 opening classics here in Flanders. Looking lean, this man. Looking as though he's certainly in good shape for Roubaix next week. How much of a boost will that be for Cancellara? He always seems pretty confident anyway. He's quite a pretty happy character, and I wonder how much it'll just help him going into Roubaix next week, or whether he just won't worry about it anyway. There's Cancellara, Bonen, Gilbert, Leukemans, Farrar, Hincapie, Roger Hammond it was, 7th place. Good ride by him to get up there. Iglinski, Danilo Hondo of Lampre, and William Bonnet, the rider from Bouygues Telecom. Just goes to show how many riders could get up into that group that we didn't notice, or we didn't get a chance to even see once the battle had commenced between Cancellara and Bonen. Good ride by Farrar, very good ride. Good ride by Hammond. Iglinski was up there all the time. Hondo snuck in there. Didn't see him up there, as did William Bonnet. Well, there may be a lot of Belgian flags and Flandrian lions around, but it's the Swiss who take the honours today. Tonight, 22:15 CET, catch up with Planet Armstrong, the comings and goings of that lesser-known American cyclist, Mr. Armstrong, and what he's up to. We saw him in the front group today, now and again, but in the end, he wasn't there in the final. Terrific race, Sean. Very briefly, do you think we'll get as good next week in Paris-Roubaix? It's been a cracking season so far.
Yes, well, Roubaix is always an exciting race. You know, there's so much going on, mechanical problems. It's part of the race, and you know, with the riders that are in shape, the big favourites will always in, and I think certainly next week another spectacular day.
From Sean and I from the Tour of Flanders, hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you next weekend. Paris-Roubaix Live, Basque Tour in between then with me and Magnus Baxter. Bye for now.